more who are helping to shape the future of the party. The Blueprint with Jen Psaki, Season 2. For ad-free listening, subscribe to MSNBC Premium on Apple Podcasts.
Nobody really wanted to go for Martin Luther King. He'd been stabbed, bombed, jailed, and he didn't have any money. If I had to take a few kicks and licks to get a Civil Rights Act, I'd do it any day of the week. That's what I call the dirty work.
Right now on MSNBC, breaking news, former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton surrenders to authorities indicted on 18 counts of mishandling classified information. Our legal experts will lay out what comes next in this case. Plus, high-stakes meeting. Ukraine's Zelensky in Washington to sit down with President Trump after the president's call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Where these talks will end and what it says for the future of the war. That's right now. And Red Line, the new roadblock from a senior Republican as the government shutdown enters its 17th day. It is 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. I am Ariel Reshef in for Ana Cabrera today, and we begin with major breaking news at the courthouse in Maryland, where former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton is expected to face a federal judge next hour. He surrendered to authorities this morning after a felony indictment on charges involving the handling of classified information. Bolton denies any wrongdoing here. The case marks a major escalation in the years-long public feud between Bolton and his former boss, President Trump, and it's the latest in a series of federal indictments against prominent Trump critics. MSNBC's Ken Delanian is outside the courthouse in Maryland, and we're joined now by our legal correspondent, Lisa Rubin, and legal analyst Charles Coleman, and national security and intel analyst Michael Feinberg. Ken, starting with you, bring us up to speed on the latest from the courthouse. What will Bolton and his initial appearance be facing?
Good morning, Ariel. Yeah, that's right. John Bolton walked into this courthouse behind me at around 8:30, and we're expecting him to make an initial appearance at around 11 a.m. That's just a formality when someone is charged with a federal crime. They make an initial appearance where the charges are read. The magistrate makes sure that they have an attorney. He'll also be booked and processed by the FBI, a mugshot taken, fingerprints taken, that sort of thing. There may be a discussion about terms of his release. But again, just a formality here. There's much more to come in this case, Ariel.
Ken, walk us through the 18 very serious charges that Bolton is now facing.
Yeah, this is a detailed indictment. John Bolton is accused of sending more than 1,000 pages of diary material that investigators say contain highly classified information to his wife and daughter as he was serving as national security advisor, seeing very sensitive information, the most sensitive of the nation's secrets. And he sent it over an unsecure email account and a messaging system. And what this indictment says is that one of his email accounts was hacked by the government of Iran or actors related to Iran. And so some of that classified material got into the hands of adversaries. And he reported the hack to the FBI at the time, according to this indictment, but did not tell them that there was sensitive material at issue, and they only learned that later. And some of these diary entries were discovered in the search of his house in August. He, of course, insists that he did nothing wrong, says he's being targeted by Donald Trump as part of a persecution campaign. His lawyer says that this conduct was gone over by the FBI years ago, and only now is he being charged, and he finds that suspicious, Ariel.
All right. So, Lisa, do these charges, these 18 charges, seem to make sense when you take into account the evidence that so far we're aware of?
The prosecution always gives you the evidence that they believe support those charges. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. I will tell you that based on their recitation of the facts in the indictment, there are other things that they possibly could have charged but didn't. For example, when they were investigating this case, we know from their search warrant affidavits that they were looking at a separate count of a conspiracy to retain classified or national defense information or to transmit it. But they did not charge individual 1 and individual 2, who we understand to be the wife and daughter, with a conspiracy count. The other thing that they could have charged, based on the facts that they lay out here, is some sort of willful concealment of retention of this information. That was a charge that was lobbed at President Trump in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. Here, one of the things that prosecutors mentioned in the indictment is that when he was hacked by someone close to the Iranian Republic in 2021, and his lawyer went to the FBI, they did not disclose how John Bolton was actually using that account at the time, as Ken recalled, to send these notes to his wife and his daughter. On that basis, they might have been able to say that Bolton and his agents were willfully withholding from the FBI the fact that he was still in possession of classified information. They didn't. But the other thing I will tell you is every decision to prosecute is one of prosecutorial discretion. Just because the facts, as alleged in an indictment, seem to support the charges doesn't necessarily mean that every prosecutor would bring these charges. And one of the things that they have to be sure about, according to the Justice Manual, is that there is a reasonable likelihood that they will get a conviction here. And given some of the other facts, things going on the outside, particularly with respect to the beef between President Trump and John Bolton, that may be a harder threshold to meet, Ariel.
That's a really important point. Charles, what does it say to you that there was no Espionage Act charge in this case, at least at this point?
Well, what it says to me is that we have a limited set of facts and that the government, to Lisa's point, ultimately was talking about the fact that this is a case that prosecutors have chosen to present in a very particular way because of what they do and do not have. And so context matters with respect to what has been charged and what has not been charged. One of the things that prosecutors in this case are going to have a challenge with is establishing what the intent was, which is why you've had this conversation about the notes to the children and to the husband and to the wife, because ultimately what that is going to be used in order to try and establish is that Bolton knew and was aware of what it was he was doing, and that he did it with a particular intent. And so ultimately, when you're talking about what was and what isn't charged, and what we know in the indictment, because we have not fully heard the theory of the case from his attorney and what they're going to present, there is a limited context that we're seeing at this point. And so it's important not to rush to judgment, because all of the facts are in the indictment, but that's not all of the facts.
And I know, Lisa, you have a clarification. This is fluid. We're getting more details about this indictment as they come in. So tell us about the Espionage Act and possible charges there.
So all the charges here that have been brought against John Bolton so far are actually Espionage Act charges. But the Espionage Act doesn't sound exclusively in classified information. What it pertains to is that you are unlawfully either taking, removing, retaining, or even transmitting national defense information. And the statute defines that as information that, if it were in the possession of one of our enemies or adversaries, could be harmful to the national defense of the United States. What John Bolton hasn't been charged with is a statute that exclusively is about the unauthorized removal of or retention of classified information. That was the statute that prosecutors, again, listed in their search warrant applications to justify the searches of Bolton's home and office. So he hasn't been charged with anything exclusively about classified information. But again, all 18 counts here sound in provisions of the Espionage Act.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification. Michael, from a national security perspective, how damning is it that the National Security Advisor himself would be allegedly emailing top secret information to his own relatives?
So if the allegations in the indictment are true, and at this point in the game, we have reason to suspect the motivations of those who brought the charges, but it is a pretty damning indictment if the facts are true. And it's very worrisome, not just because Bolton was the national security advisor, but because he is simply one in a long line of very senior executive branch officials who have potentially fallen into this trap and retained classified information long after their tenure in government was over. The president himself was charged with this on dozens of counts in Florida. Former President Joe Biden was investigated for this. Former Vice President Mike Pence was investigated for this. A number of senior generals, such as David Petraeus and James Cartwright, were investigated and or pled guilty to this. There is a real problem within the U.S. government of very senior executives not taking their obligations to protect classified material seriously. But again, I want to hasten to add, I'm saying that outside even the context of just John Bolton's situation. This is very much a trend.
It seems like a concerning trend at that. Michael, the FBI interviewed Bolton about 8 times going back all the way to 2020 across 3 different administrations. His book went through the classification review process, the official channels. So what new information may have sparked these new charges pertaining to the messages from 2018 and 2019?
So it's very difficult to say. As Lisa noted, prosecutors only include the information in the indictment that is going to be most helpful to them in terms of securing the charges. So there could be a lot going on in the background that we'll find out at a later date that we don't know now. But based on my reading of the indictment, I suspect what happened is we already know from the public record that the first Trump administration looked at Bolton for charges pertaining to mishandling classified information when he published his book. The Biden administration chose not to pursue those. And now, many years later, new charges are being brought. So my guess would be something in the intervening years between when Biden declined the charges and today, something happened. And based on what we've seen in the indictment, that something appears to be that John Bolton himself reported the cyber intrusion, and that may have led the FBI or the intelligence community to do a deeper dig in terms of what exactly did the Iranians obtain, and therefore stumbled across new classified information he had.
Ken, I'm curious, is the standard practice in the intel community for people to go out and publish a memoir? Is that common practice? And how is the classification review process actually conducted? How did it fail here? It's becoming
increasingly common, Ariel, and this is a real gray area because we're not talking about documents that were marked classified. We're talking about notes that Bolton took based on his time in the Situation Room and other sensitive places that were for a diary pursuant to a memoir. And people are doing that more and more. And often they have to submit a manuscript to a publication review board. And then very often that board says, you need to take this or that out because it's classified. Well, they submitted that information over generally an unsecure email. So classified information got into the wild that way, but they often are not prosecuted for that. But this, what Bolton is alleged to have done seems to have taken it much further. It's similar to what General Petraeus was charged with. General Petraeus, remember, was the CIA director. He had black books full of classified information that he gave to an author who was preparing a book about him. When you write this stuff down and it's very detailed and the context is that you know it's sensitive national defense information, that's where you really get into trouble. And the real issue here is that the Iranians got access to it, so there was real damage. And just to go back to what Michael was saying, the way they found out about this is my reporting, it's not in the indictment, is that the U.S. intelligence community penetrated the system where Iran had these emails, and they discovered them. And that's how they got new information in this case, and they learned that there was classified information in that AOL account that John Bolton was sharing.
What a circuitous way to figure all of this out. Charles, we've seen President Trump slam John Bolton out in the public square quite a bit. Could that factor into Bolton's defense here?
It could, and I expect that it will. This is a classic case of two things can be true, Ariel. So on one hand, as Lisa's already laid out, prosecutors have the discretion as to when and whether they decide to bring a particular case. And I suspect that when this case is placed in context by his attorneys, they are going to point directly to all of the rhetoric that Donald Trump has been putting out about prosecuting his political foes. The beef between Bolton and Trump is not something new, and it's not a secret. And so the conversation is going to be, from their perspective, this was basically a hit job that was ordered by the president on him for this type of prosecution. And I think that that is going to play in terms of their theory of the case and their presentation ultimately to a jury, which is where I expect this ultimately to flesh out.
These two things are not mutually exclusive.
Correct.
Ken Delanian, Michael Feinberg, Charles, thank you so much. Lisa, I know you guys were going to stick around because we're going to have much more of this breaking news. President Trump once called him a, quote, terrific guy who, quote, knows a lot. So how did Trump and Bolton go from friend to deep foes? We're going to talk about it in 90 seconds.
60% of women experience leaks with bladder protection pads. Try Always Discreet. It has a unique core that converts liquid to gel and bunches 25% less often than Poise. Try Always Discreet. It's designed to protect.
If you believe that your body is your own and that reproductive health care is health care, then donate to Planned Parenthood and put your values into action. Efforts to shut us down have already put 200 health centers at risk of closing. Go online, call, or scan this code to donate $19 a month right now, and we'll send you this Care No Matter What t-shirt. This is the time to show up for your values before it's too late. Go online, call, or scan this code.
This one goes better with the walls.
This is so much easier than the home improvement store.
There's the measurement fee, delivery fee, restocking fee.
And installation.
Oh, no.
A little more clarity about how exactly he planned to use them. And you know, this is Zelensky's third time at the White House since President Trump returned to office in January. It's their sixth face-to-face meeting overall. And I think the dynamic here will be somewhat familiar to Zelensky. You know, over and over again, the president has appeared willing to either put on sanctions or to provide these new capabilities for Ukraine, only to back off somewhat once he talks to Putin and once he puts these new meetings on the schedule. And so I think it will be the imperative for Zelensky today to really try and reinforce why he thinks these tomahawks are necessary and what he thinks Ukraine can do going forward to help turn the momentum around on the battlefield. And so a very critical meeting. You know, Zelensky and Trump, after that very infamous Oval Office blow-up back in February, have seemed to be getting along quite well. The president seems as if he's aware of many of the dynamics that are going on the ground. And I think clearly for Zelensky, the wager is that the more often that he's in front of President Trump, the more successful he will be in getting what he wants.
All right, Kevin Liptak, thanks so much. Wolf?
Lots going on. I want to continue this conversation. Our chief national security analyst, Jim Sciutto, is here with us in the Situation Room. Jim, Ukraine's president would like President Trump to commit to sending these Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine. Is that likely to happen?
Well, the president, to Kevin's point, in recent
Oval Office yesterday upon learning this news.
John Bolton was just indicted by a grand jury in Maryland. Do you have a reaction to that?
I didn't know that. You tell me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but.
Trump, who we should note, John Bolton was his national security advisor in the first administration, the longest individual to serve as his national security advisor between both administrations. So I just want to let you listen to his reaction from the Oval Office yesterday upon learning this news.
John Bolton was just indicted by a grand jury in Maryland. Do you have a reaction to that?
I didn't know that. You tell me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it goes.
John Kelly, James Mattis, Rex Tillerson, H.R. McMaster, Mark Esper, these were all top national security advisors to the president in his first administration. But upon leaving the White House in 2020, over these last 5 years, among all of them, it has been John Bolton, Ariel, who has been the loudest critic, vocally, publicly going on camera repeatedly to criticize, condemn, and warn Americans about what a second Trump administration would look like.
Vaughn, clearly there's a deep history there, but also plenty of acrimony to go around between the president and Bolton in recent years. Walk us through a bit of their relationship.
Right. He served as national security advisor from 2018 to 2019 for a year and a half. And there was actually a dispute in 2019 on whether Trump fired him from the post or whether it was Bolton who chose to resign. They both had a public tit for tat in a dispute over who made the call for him to exit there. There was a large disagreements over some foreign policy, but also in those months upon exiting there, he ended up writing a book, Bolton, in which he said that, referring to the impeachment proceedings that the then president was undergoing as it pertained to his calls to have the Bidens investigated by Ukraine while holding up $400 billion in financial aid, that he said that, in fact, those two things were tied together. And so over the years, Bolton, even in the aftermath of the classified documents indictment in 2023, he was a strong critic of Donald Trump and questioned his handling of major national security and classified documents. And if you go back even, I think it's worth going back to him suggesting that quote, a mountain of facts demonstrates that Trump is unfit to be president. If his first 4 years were bad, a second 4 will be worse. Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, others, they think he's a laughing fool, and they're fully prepared to take advantage of him. Trump's self-absorption makes it possible for him to understand that. I can't underscore enough just how much of a critic over the last 6 years John Bolton was, and Donald Trump was not unfamiliar with those criticisms, because Bolton was somebody who was a longtime Republican hawk and somebody who suddenly was outright encouraging Americans to not vote for him and not vote for the Republican to get back in office.
And I know, Ashley, you've been following their relationship very closely for a very long time now. You wrote a piece in the Washington Post back in 2020 entitled "All the President's Disloyal Men" about Bolton's exit and then the release of his memoir after that. At the time, you said, quote, "The short gestation period, less than 5 months between Bolton's September exit from the administration to his damning book manuscript, underscores an uncomfortable truth for Trump. For a president who demands absolute loyalty, he inspires strikingly little of the same, with former aides, advisors, and associates turning on him with thrumming regularity." The president values, obviously, Ashley, loyalty. The concept of loyalty, very important to him. How hard does he take it when some of these allies turn on him?
First, I just want to go back a little further, which is at the beginning of their relationship, there was a lot of discussion over whether Trump would make Bolton his national security advisor, in part because he didn't like his mustache, right? That was sort of the first we heard of that relationship. So it seems trivial, but it's fraught from the beginning. But once Bolton overcomes the mustache hurdle, I remember talking to Republicans and sources at the time who told me this is not going to end well. First of all, their foreign policy views were quite different. Bolton was much more hawkish than Donald Trump. And Bolton also had a reputation for leaving administrations and being quite critical, which brings us to your question. Donald Trump does expect absolute loyalty from his aides, but because he has a reputation for not returning it in kind, he often doesn't get that loyalty in kind. And because the people in his orbit expect at some point that he will turn on them, he will betray them, he will fire them by tweet, he will remove their security detail, as he did with Bolton when they're under threat from the Iranians. You had a lot of people, especially in Trump's first term, who were taking precautions to sort of, in their view, save themselves when the president turned on them, whether that was taking notes about what had happened so they could share it and criticize Trump publicly, whether that was keeping the sort of secret recordings that Trump was allegedly known for. You had all these people who came out and criticized him, and he took it incredibly poorly.
What's interesting about this is that Bolton, as Vaughn alluded to, was very respected in foreign policy circles and hawkish foreign policy conservative circles. What ripple effect could this have on the political ecosystem?
Well, I mean, you're seeing this on the one hand, and we don't know what we don't know about the charges. And there's some sense that this indictment against Bolton, if what we see is true, may be more problematic and serious for him. But you're seeing this in a moment where the president is quite clearly seeking retribution and punishment against his critics and against his rivals, whether it's going after James Comey and Letitia James, or revoking the security details of people who served him like Bolton, and who in many cases are under threat from the Iranians and other foreign actors because of actions they took at Trump's direction. It could have tremendous ripple effects. But again, I don't think it's just the foreign policy community. It's this sense that if you get on Trump's bad side, you will be punished in some capacity. That is sort of the most chilling ripple effect.
This is certainly multidimensional. Vaughn Hilliard and Ashley Parker, thank you both. Next, high-stakes meeting. President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky set to sit down at the White House in a matter of hours from now. Where peace talks stand right now as Trump announces a meeting with Vladimir Putin in the coming weeks.
Shimmering, glimmering, that's the golden lady.
At the Farmer's Dog, our fresh food plans give dogs good health and great hair. Get 50% off your first box, only at thefarmersdog.com.
This is Bombas. They took socks and asked, what if they could be way more comfortable? What if comfort could be for everyone? At Bombas, one purchased equals one donated. Get 20% off your first order at bombas.com.
Arthritis causes pain in your joints. Unlike pills, Voltaren gel is applied to the site of pain, penetrating deep through the skin to the joint, reducing intense pain caused by inflammation so you can move more freely. Voltaren, clinically proven, long-lasting arthritis pain relief.
Rough, dry eye? Mibo is the only prescription dry eye drop that forms a protective layer for the #1 cause. Remove contact lenses before using Mibo. Wait at least 30 minutes before putting them back in. Eye redness and blurred vision may occur. Ask about Mibo.
Brandon Coley, Jablonski Auto Body, LLC.
What'd she call Harper? Oh, we actually sold the Twins naming rights.
You know, like stadiums do. Very lucrative.
Oasis Breeze Tan and Spa.
The right money moves aren't as absurd as you think.
I'm Matt Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. Your car steering wheel could be a ticking time bomb. At least 24 people have died and many more injured because their airbags fired shrapnel at them upon inflating. Tens of millions of cars have been recalled. If you suffered cuts that required stitches, hearing or vision loss, or broken bones, or if a loved one was killed in a crash involving a deployed airbag, please contact us today.
Call 800-479-0088. Call now.
If history has taught us anything, it's not to root against the underdog. It pays to know what's coming.
Check the group chat!
Every great leap began with a bold first step. And there's no shortage of second chances. Against impossible odds, you don't stand down. You swing first.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rose Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Sildenafil starts things off strong, and Tadalafil stays in your system for longer. More confidence, more control. Rose Sparks. Connect with a provider at ro.co/sparks.
More breaking news this morning. This time at the White House, President Trump is expected to host Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a matter of hours from now. It follows Trump's call yesterday with Russia's President Vladimir Putin and talk of another potential summit between the two leaders in the coming weeks, potentially this time in Budapest. Let's bring in now MSNBC White House correspondent Jake Traylor and former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul. He's also an MSNBC contributor. Jake, walk us through what the White House is hoping to achieve today with President Zelensky in that meeting.
Yeah, there's a few things on the table here today and ultimate goals for the White House in terms of this meeting. The first and foremost, I was just speaking with the White House official who said this ultimately is a version of a pressure campaign on Russia and on President Putin to say, if need be, and President Trump said this in his own words earlier this week, if need be, the United States is willing to offer increased militant operation to Ukraine, including potentially these Tomahawk missiles, which kind of opens up a whole new world of precision in this military war that continues to go on. More than that, I think, too, this really is emblematic and representative of the fraying and differing relationships that we've seen between Trump and Zelensky and also Trump and Putin over the past few months. We've seen Zelensky at the White House in Trump's second term. This is going to be the third time, so two different times before. The first and second time, really, it could not be more contrasting. Of course, that infamous time in February where we essentially saw a fighting match between Trump and Vance versus Zelensky, and then we saw a much more amicable relationship a few months later. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Trump has tried to leverage his relationship with Russian President Putin to reach into this war. Ultimately, what we've seen is Putin's not quite ready to end that war yet. We've seen Trump grow and frustration over the past few months. And so today is all about that pressure campaign. There will be considerations for increased militant operation. And then more than anything, there's going to continue to be conversations around some type of territory dispute. What is Zelensky and what is Russia willing to agree to end this war? Trump said he's got wind in his sails following his time in the Middle East, trying to reach peace there. He's going to use that today as leverage to go and try and end this war with Ukraine.
Jake, thank you so much. Ambassador, you know, we saw that meeting in the Oval Office that did not go well for Zelensky. Since then, there have been some better, smoother times. We see the president sort of doing a 180 in his support for Ukraine. His tone has softened. It's strengthened when it comes to Russia. What's happening right now in the war that makes this visit different?
Well, this visit is to increase pressure, as you were just talking about. It got interrupted by Putin watching all of the festivities. That, you know, the Ukrainian delegation has been in Washington for several days now. Zelensky joined them yesterday for this meeting today at the White House, and Putin didn't like it. And so he called up the president. It was initiated by the Kremlin, and he said, we need to talk, and invited him to come to Budapest. And that, I think, is going to disrupt, at least he wants it to disrupt, what could have been a conversation about increased pressure, both on the military side, these Tomahawk missiles, but also sanctions. I want to point out that the president has changed his rhetoric on the war. That is true. He has gotten tougher on Putin. But in terms of policies, the Trump administration has not implemented one new single sanction on Russia since they came to office in January 20th. And with respect to military assistance, they've sold weapons to the Europeans, but also have not provided any new American assistance to Ukraine. So Zelensky's hoping for that, and Putin's hoping that his phone call yesterday will disrupt that.
So, Ambassador, to that point, you've told me this before. There have been no sanctions on Russia so far, so why not?
President Trump likes to talk tough and not act against Russia. For some reason, I don't know if it's fear, I don't know if it's solidarity with his friend in Moscow, but when it comes to coercive diplomacy with the Russians, he's been very reluctant to do it. I know the Ukrainians and President Zelensky today want to see that. They want to see the rhetoric matched with actions. But you just heard the president yesterday saying about the Tomahawks, you know, after a few days earlier saying, oh, maybe we should give them. Yesterday he said, oh, we need them. We need our supplies. Which suggests to me that President Zelensky today might be disappointed.
So how significant, though, if Trump were to acquiesce and send Tomahawks over to Ukraine, how significant would that be? And would that be a significant pressure point for Putin?
Absolutely. It should have been done a long time ago, in my opinion. And sanctions, new sanctions should have been put in place, including seizing the Russian central bank assets that are sitting in American banks today. That could be literally done today if the president wanted to, because it would send a signal of resolve to Putin that time is not on his side. It won't change the war overnight. Tomahawks aren't going to change the battlefield overnight, but it would send a signal that we are not abandoning Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. And I hope the president has the courage to do that today.
Sometimes the message is as important as what's happening on the battlefield. Ambassador Michael McFaul, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have other breaking news today we are following, this time in Broadview, Illinois, where we're seeing protests at the ICE facility there amid the Trump administration's crackdown in Chicago. MSNBC's Rosa Flores is following all of this for us. And Rosa, you've been covering what's been happening in Chicago. What are we seeing now?
Ariel, good morning. What we're seeing this morning are intense moments, clashes between police and protesters. You can see from that video a line of officers, a pretty intense moment as they try to push back protesters. I can tell you from being there several days and just coming to New York after being there earlier this week, that for the most part, all of these protests outside the Broadview facility in Illinois are peaceful. There's usually groups of people playing music and sometimes dressed in costumes. Every now and then there is a clash with police. Sometimes it can be as simple as a protester accidentally turning over a barricade or something simple, and then there's a quick clash and then things return to normal. I think it's important to note why this is happening. The people in Chicago are fed up with the Trump administration's immigration crackdowns. That's why they are out there. I talked to many protesters while I was there. Some of them explained that they feel that America is downward spiraling into fascism, and they feel they have to be out there, to be outspoken, to express in their First Amendment rights what they feel should not be happening in this country. There are other people who told me that they are out there protesting because there are so many people in the immigrant community who can't speak out for themselves. Ariel, I can tell you, I spent a day in an area in a North Chicago suburb, and it was so eerie because you could see manicured lawns, you could see beautiful, lush gardens, Halloween decorations outside the neighborhood, and there was nobody outside. People were inside with their children cooped up. Then you started looking a little closer at windows, Ariel, and you could see that they were barricaded with plywood and thick curtains. And so back to these protesters, that's why some of these people are out there speaking out. They're U.S. citizens. They feel that they can speak out for the people who are in fear in Chicago.
All right,
Ariel.
Rosa Flores, I know you will continue to follow this developing story as we look at those live pictures in Illinois right now. Ahead, more on that breaking news. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton surrendering to federal authorities. How this case stacks up to the cases of Trump's other foes who have also faced indictments now.
Nothing makes a gathering great like Eggland's best eggs. They're just so delicious. With better nutrition, too. For us, it's eggs any style, as long as they're the best. Eggland's best.
All that will come out of this hearing that's about to begin. Pamela.
And Wolf, happening now, tensions between the United States and Venezuela are escalating after yet another American strike on a boat in the Caribbean yesterday. It marks at least the sixth strike by the U.S. military on 6 separate boats. Unlike the last 5, this one was not made public by the Trump administration, and it's believed that there are survivors among the crew hit. Their status at this point is unclear. U.S. Air Force B-52 bombers also flew off the coast of Venezuela for hours this week. So I want to bring in CNN national security correspondent Natasha Bertrand to tell us more about what we know about this latest military strike.
Yeah, Pam, so this is the latest in a series of strikes the U.S. has carried out on suspected narco traffickers operating in the Caribbean. But as you noted, this is particularly notable because it's the first one that the administration has not publicly disclosed. Previously, of the last 5 strikes before the one yesterday, you saw President Trump tweet about it. You saw Secretary of Defense Hegseth post about it, saying that all on board these boats were killed in these strikes. But the one yesterday, we're told, was not publicized, and it appears to be the first one that actually left survivors on board. And so that indicates that it was botched in some way. And the administration to this moment has still not publicly acknowledged that it occurred. Now, it's worth noting that the administration has said they're going to continue to carry out these strikes on suspected drug traffickers. So expect to see more of these, but clearly something happened yesterday where things did not go according to plan.
And we're also learning at the same time that the commander overseeing forces in the Caribbean is set to retire just 1 year into his tenure. What's going on here?
This is really significant. It is highly unusual for a commander of a combatant command to retire about 1 year into his tenure. Admiral Halsey, he was sworn in November 2024. He is in the middle of a major operation in the Caribbean, and he apparently is going to be retiring on December 12th. Now, we're told that tensions between Halsey and Secretary Hegseth, they have been simmering in recent weeks because Halsey was apparently concerned about the operations being carried out in the Caribbean, including about whether they were lawful. And Secretary Hegseth was frustrated that he was not moving faster, we're told. And all this came to a head during a particularly tense meeting last week with Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Halsey at the Pentagon, where we're told he offered to resign. And we're seeing the results of that now. He is going to be stepping down. Very unusual.
Yeah, as you said, significant. Natasha Bertrand, thank you so much. Wolf?
All right, amid the flurry of military activity in the Caribbean, CNN is now learning there's a bipartisan push in the U.S. Senate to force a vote to prevent war on Venezuela without formal approval from Congress. Virginia Senator Tim Kaine is teaming up with Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky and his fellow Democrat Senator Adam Schiff of California. Let's go live right now to CNN senior reporter Annie Grayer, who's up on Capitol Hill. Annie, first of all, what can you tell us about this effort and the chances of the vote actually passing?
Well, we are expecting this vote, Wolf, to happen in the next few weeks, but it's unclear if it will be successful because this is not the first time that the pair have teamed up to try and push the Senate to vote on a war powers resolution. We saw last week the Senate did not pass a war powers resolution on the military action in the Caribbean. Earlier this summer, it failed to pass a war powers resolution on the military strikes in Iran. And this is a larger question now in front of lawmakers, particularly in front of Republicans, about what role Congress has to play here. Democrats say that President Trump must come to Congress, his constitutional authority, to get approval from Congress for any war powers or war actions he wants to take, whereas Republicans seem comfortable ceding this authority to the president, aside from Republican Senator Rand Paul, as you mentioned. So apart from this, there's also this question of what oversight Congress should have here. Democrats say they have not been briefed on any of these strikes or actions. Republicans, again, largely seem comfortable with this. So this is a broad question, a constitutional question that lawmakers are having to answer. But with the government shut down, there's a lot on their plate. We'll see how this unfolds in the next couple of weeks.
I will watch it together with you, Annie Grayer. Thank you very, very much, Pamela.
And coming up right here in the Situation Room, taking to the debate stage, the candidates for New York City mayor did not waste any time taking shots at one another. So
this is the kind of indictment Charles and I are both used to seeing coming out of the Justice Department.
This is, of course, a case that the Biden administration looked at, Charles, and then decided to move on from. Do you believe that if Bolton were still in Trump's good graces, that we would see this investigation and this indictment at this point?
Well, we might see the investigation. As to whether we would see the indictment, I do not know. This is something that on certain levels had already, as you said, Ariel, been looked at, and they decided to move on. What new information has surfaced that caused them to reopen the investigation, to dig deeper, and to ultimately bring this indictment? We aren't necessarily sure yet in terms of the timeline, and that may more likely than not reveal itself throughout the process of discovery and potentially at trial. But it's impossible to say that the Department of Justice would not have pursued this if they had all of the facts for the entirety of the time. But because we do know that this is something that comes from someone who has been in the crosshairs of the president, the likelihood does sort of move in the direction that there may have been added pressure. But to Joyce's point, given all of the other indicia that we have seen around the procedure, the indictment, the investigation, and who has openly said that they were involved by signing their signature to the indictment, this is a case, because we have a speaking indictment, because we've seen more, that certainly appears to have a lot more teeth than the other indictments that we've been talking about of late.
Yeah, and we've been trying to make that distinction because it's an important one. Joyce, do you expect that Trump's classified documents case could come up in the course of the defense here?
I suspect that Mr. Bolton's defense lawyers will make a selective prosecution argument, arguing that he's being treated differently than other people. But I think that that's likely to focus on Pete Hegseth and on Signalgate, where you have a situation where the sitting Secretary of Defense, I know he styles himself as the Secretary of War now, but he on Signal shared information that was classified while pilots were actually in the air, shared information with family members, which is very similar to the conduct that's alleged in Bolton's case. I think we'll see an argument made that that's selective prosecution. The difficulty his lawyer will face is that here you've got this intervening layer of professional prosecutors who are involved, and in the absence of evidence that they were following orders from the White House or others that contravened their professional decisions, it'll be very difficult to make out a selective prosecution defense.
Charles, obviously we've seen Bolton come out and criticize President Trump during his classified documents investigation. Could prosecutors use that as a way to signal that Bolton knows what he did was a bad idea, that it was wrong?
Well, they can, but they don't need to. There are so many different other avenues that they can pursue, given Bolton's resume and his tenure in office, that directly point to the fact that these things were a no-no. In fact, even his own sort of mea culpa to the FBI as part of what is alleged in the indictment indicate that he knows that this was a problem. So I don't necessarily know that they need to go there, even though they could. Just his sheer status alone really indicates that this is something you are of a stature professionally within your career where you knew right from wrong and you knew what the regulations were. And in this case, you did not follow them, and you were aware that you weren't following them.
It sounds like you think that there may be a pretty strong case to prove intent here.
I think that in terms of intent, that's where you're going to, like we were talking about earlier, see a lot of the different communications come into play between his family and other private actors, because that's where you're going to be able to establish it. It is one thing to say that I did not know that these documents were being transmitted or that this information was being disseminated, and I was not aware. But when you're talking about notes that you actually drafted yourself, that you gave to your family, that's where you're going to have a real problem with intent, and it's going to aid the prosecution's case.
And the correspondence, which we will discuss later, about between Bolton and his family members, sort of indicating that they shouldn't be sharing it further.
Exactly.
That's going to play into. Charles Coleman, Joyce Vance, thank you both for your analysis. And coming up, air traffic controllers have one of the most stressful jobs in the country, and they're working without pay as the government shutdown stretches.
800-384-1256.
The Arena with Casey Hunt, today at 4 p.m. on CNN.
Well, the sparks were flying as the top three contenders
conversation in any way that could potentially alternate the momentum of this race so far. And I think the conclusion at the end of the 2 hours was that no, the debate did not really change the conversation in terms of where this race is going, but it was an opportunity to see the very issues that all of these candidates have been focused on. Zohran Mamdani, the front runner, focused on affordability, trying to tell voters that he will be a clean break from politics of status quo. People like Andrew Cuomo, who have been in the New York political scene for a very long time. And then Andrew Cuomo still trying to make a comeback, arguing that his experience as an executive matters, especially when it comes to defending New York City from a potential attack from the Trump administration. Take a listen to this other exchange between the candidates.
This is not a job for someone who has no management experience to run 300,000 people, no financial experience to run $115 billion budget. He literally has never had a job.
What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience.
That was another defining moment of the debate, Pamela. Zohran trying to criticize Cuomo for his lack of quote-unquote integrity, of course, making reference to the scandals that resulted in the resignation of Andrew Cuomo, which in part he has denied. But the issue of how he handled the pandemic, the sexual harassment accusations that he had while he was in office all came up last night. And Cuomo tried to pivot again to public safety, to experience, while Mamdani tried to say that he would do things in a different way, focus on affordability and working class people and the concerns that New Yorkers who live in this city and struggle to make ends meet are actually worried about.
All right, Gloria Pazmino in New York, thanks so much. Wolf?
All right, Pamela, I want to discuss what's going on in New York right now with Christina Greer. She's a political science professor at Fordham University in New York City. Christina, thanks so much for being here. Do you think anything really changed as a result of the debate last night?
Well, yes and no, in the sense that people don't necessarily tune into debates to be changed or moved. But I do think Mamdani's grace, presence, the fact that he really hit home affordability and all of his talking points so well, I think made some voters who may have been waffling just a bit a lot more comfortable and confident with the fact that he could lead a city of almost 9 million people.
There are some new numbers from our data analyst, Harry Anton, that show that Zoran Mamdani maintains his lead in this race big time, now at 49%, up from 45% last month. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo has 31% support, and Republican Curtis Sliwa has 15%. This poll was done before the debate last night. We're waiting for new polls to come out to see if there's been any significant changes in those numbers. Cuomo certainly needed a big night to become more competitive with Mamdani, who won the Democratic primary. Do you think he got that support?
He absolutely did not, Wolf. I mean, don't forget, Cuomo lost the Democratic primary on June 24th by roughly 13 percentage points. And so he needed a huge night, and he'll have an opportunity on October 22nd when they debate again. But there was nothing forward-thinking, really, from the Cuomo talking points. There was a lot of drudging up the past of Mamdani, but I think a lot of New Yorkers, because there's so much chaos going on in Washington, D.C., they're really worried about the future of the city. And it's not just public safety. A large percentage of New Yorkers who make from $40,000 to $400,000 are worried about whether or not they can stay in the city. And Cuomo didn't really provide a vision. And especially since he's been a politician, you know, as governor, as AG, he's been in the New York political realm for close to 4 decades. I think there was a lot more expectation that he could lay out a plan, and that just didn't happen last night.
Christina, as you know, a lot of the analysts are suggesting that the Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa, did well last night, and his numbers may go up. That would be at the expense of Cuomo, right? He'll take voters away from Cuomo, not necessarily from Mamdani. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Wolf. Don't forget, in 2021, Curtis Sliwa got roughly a third of the vote. And those are people who are Republicans that can't bring themselves to vote for a Democrat. Curtis Sliwa was on stage last night without his famous red beret. He tried to present himself as an alternative to those who might think that Mamdani is too progressive or that Cuomo is too problematic. I think we might see a bump for Sliwa, but I don't think that we'll see the 30% that we saw in 2021. I think he'll just give some folks a place to land their vote, especially if they can't seem to bring themselves to vote for a Democrat or an independent.
All right, Christina Greer of Fordham University, thank you very, very much. Pamela.
All right, Wolf, breaking news into CNN. Protests are happening right outside an ICE detention facility in the Chicago suburb of Broadview. Right here, these are new pictures coming into the Situation Room. There are reports of several people being detained. We do have a reporter on the ground there, and we will be checking with her very soon. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This moment, story time.
Just stay out forever. I mean, to be honest with you. Now, what we're doing is we're cutting Democrat programs that we didn't want. Because, I mean, they made one mistake. They didn't realize that that gives me the right to cut programs that Republicans never wanted. You know, giveaways, welfare programs, et cetera.
Democrats certainly dispute the legality of that argument, and I've been doing a temperature check with some Democrats, particularly those with lots of federal workers in their districts, and so far they are remaining resilient. One from Maryland with more than 40,000 workers in her district earlier this week said, yes, she has a heart and a soul about the pain that people are suffering, but she says she doesn't want a bad thing to happen come January when we could see the high premiums for health care start to skyrocket. And so this drags in to next week.
All right, Kevin Fry, we know you will continue to follow it for us, probably not over the weekend, but possibly next week. Thank you. Joining me now is one of the 13,000 air traffic controllers working without pay right now. Pete Lefevre is a member of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association and helps control the skies over Washington. First of all, Pete, thanks for your work that you do. We saw you over the week handing out pamphlets and flyers to educate travelers about what's going on right now. What do you want people to know?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on. 17 days ago, the government shutdown was just a topic of conversation. It was kind of in the background. But now today, as we face the real likelihood of a zero paycheck coming up, it is 100% on the minds of every one of us at Washington Dulles, and we are concerned about the financial uncertainty that a zero paycheck brings for us.
Yeah, so speaking of that, you only received a partial paycheck, as I understand it, on Tuesday. If there's no deal over the next 2 weeks, you'll only get an IOU. Are you going to be able to make it financially until this is over?
IOUs don't pay the bills. It's challenging for us as a facility. We are all coming together as best we can, trying to support one another. We're talking about, what financial institutions are providing zero-interest loans. We've been talking about, the possibility of if people need to look into a gig job, which gig job provides the best income and the fastest way to get people paid. It's an unfortunate distraction that we're all dealing with at this particular moment.
Yeah, we had some of those relief measures up on our screen there for our viewers. There's already a shortage of air traffic controllers. We've reported on this. Talk to me about how this is compounding an already concerning situation. Some are saying that air traffic controllers call out when there's a shutdown. What's the risk to public safety here?
Well, right now, air traffic controllers in many places are working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. We are trying to attract the best and the brightest. We're trying to get people hired into this system. And I feel like it's this, anytime that you have a situation where you may not be paid on time, that may have a negative impact on our ability to attract folks that we desperately need to have coming into this system.
I have to ask you, you heard our reporter Kevin Fry there at the top about the gridlock going on in Washington. What do you want to say to lawmakers who can't seem to get a deal done to reopen the government?
Our ask is simple. We just would like to see the federal government reopened. We'd like to have our paycheck appear in our bank accounts as we would expect it to next week. That way we can relieve ourselves of this financial uncertainty and get back to doing the great work that we do day in and day out for the American people and the American economy.
Clue us in on this. How do these sick outs affect the towers, and how many does it take in order for a tower at an important airport to close down?
Air traffic controllers are some of the most professional employees out there. We come to work day in and day out, and we are going to continue to do so for the American people and for the American economy.
So it sounds like sick outs aren't really a thing at this very moment. But Pete, we really appreciate you talking to us, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Take care. President Trump and Ukraine's leader due to meet in just a few hours. We'll talk to a former Zelensky advisor, plus ex-Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton appearing
alone in a room with the Ukrainians. So we shall see what happens there. But let's learn a little bit more about these weapons. I want to bring in CNN military analyst Colonel Cedric Layton. Colonel, just how powerful are these missiles? Why is it that Zelensky wants these missiles so bad?
Yeah, Pam, this is one of the key things here. First of all, these missiles are pretty fast. They go at 550 miles per hour. They were first used during Desert Storm. About 1,000 pounds of conventional explosives right here in the warhead. And they're mainly used for anti-armor, anti-personnel effects. And one of the key things is this missile flies really fast, and it's very, very accurate. And in fact, the range that these missiles have is really incredible because it's up to 1,553 miles. That means that cities like Yekaterinburg, Chelyabinsk, and Omsk are right within the range of a Ukrainian missile strike. That's way beyond Moscow and St. Petersburg, which are the main reasons that Ukraine would be wanting to use these.
All right, so tell us a little bit more about the kind of impact these would have on the battlefield and sort of how deeply it could go.
Well, one of the key things with this is that, when it goes so deeply, you can see that they will actually move forward in certain areas, like right along here. So what will happen is these are longer range missiles, the Tomahawks, if they're used. So they'll go after areas throughout Russia. But that'll also free up Ukraine to use other weapons in the more close-run areas, such as along the front lines right here. And if the Russians were to attack, say, against Kharkiv, for example, their second largest city, they could use other weapons that would then be freed up. So what that means is that the Ukrainians would then have the ability to go way deep into Russia and really put at risk all the industrial sites that Russia has that have been basically retooled to be the war economy for the Russians.
So what about training for this? I mean, do the Ukrainians have the training for these Tomahawks?
So one of the key things is that they do not have the actual training for this type of missile. But one of the key things is that the Ukrainians can learn very quickly. The Russians themselves have basically said that they want to make sure that the missiles don't come in because they think that the training would be provided by the Americans, or the Americans would have to stay in Ukraine to allow these missiles to be fired. But that is probably not going to be the case because the Ukrainians have proven that they are very capable of taking the training that they learned from the West and then using it for their purposes.
And all of a sudden, Cedric Leighton, Trump is now suggesting he may not necessarily be able to send these Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine because it would deplete the U.S. stockpile, which would not necessarily be good. How significant is that warning that he's releasing right now? Because that would only encourage the Russians to go ahead and continue doing what they're doing if they don't think these Tomahawk cruise missiles are going to be coming to Ukraine.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Wolf. So there is some truth to exactly what President Trump has been saying, because there was a production of less than 100 Tomahawk missiles for the U.S. in the last year. The Navy only took delivery, I think, of less than 70, if I remember correctly. So what that means is that these missiles are basically being used quite effectively by the things that the U.S. does, say in the Middle East, for example. But if they're being deployed to Ukraine, then what that would mean, Wolf, is that they would then be used in a fashion that would really put at risk everything that's out there for the Russians. And it would also cause some difficulty in our defense industrial base. So that's why President Trump said what he said.
All right, Colonel Cedric Leighton, always great to see you. Thanks for breaking it down for us. We do appreciate it.
You bet.
You know, it's interesting because I was the Pentagon correspondent during the Operation Desert Storm, the war against Saddam Hussein, and when the U.S. began using Tomahawk cruise missiles, and they were so effective in defeating Saddam Hussein's military. And so there's a lot of good history as far as these Tomahawk cruise missiles are concerned.
Yep.
The next hour of the Situation Room starts right now.
Happening now, breaking news. President Trump's former National Security Advisor John Bolton is set to make his first appearance before a federal judge today following a grand jury indictment. He is the third Trump opponent to face federal charges in a matter of weeks.
We want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer with Pamela Brown, and you're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
And we're following the breaking news. The former National Security Advisor, Ambassador John Bolton, is set to appear before a federal judge at any minute, one day after being indicted by a federal grand jury. He's facing 18 counts of mishandling classified information, Pamela.
And prosecutors are alleging, Wolf, that Bolton kept and shared classified information. The FBI searched his home, which you can see here in August. He is the third Trump political foe to be indicted in the past month. So let's bring in CNN's Caitlin Poland. She's been following this story every step of the way and joins us live from the federal courthouse in Maryland, where John Bolton could appear before a judge at any moment. So bring us there, Caitlin.
Truly, any moment. Everybody is assembled inside the courtroom right now. I was just over there inside the courthouse. It's Bolton, his defense lawyers, the prosecutors. We saw them all head in. The judge who is going to be overseeing this case, his name is Ted Schwang. He was appointed to the bench by President Barack Obama about a decade ago, but that's not who is going to be hearing this case today for this initial appearance. So the very first time that Bolton will be facing this indictment and these 18 criminal counts of mishandling or transmitting classified information, that will be before a magistrate judge, the chief magistrate judge in this district, someone who generally would see someone at the very first stages of a case for initial criminal procedures. That judge today, his name is Timothy Sullivan. He's been on the bench for more than a decade as well. So both judges in this courthouse, pretty experienced judges overseeing this case. We are waiting to see exactly what will happen in court today, though. We do expect Bolton to be read the charges that he is facing, be told formally what he is charged with, perhaps given the opportunity at this time
to enter his pleading of not guilty, which we expect from him. He already said in a statement yesterday that he plans to fight these charges. But this is also a moment where we will see what the Justice Department wants to do next. Are they going to ask for some sort of restrictions on John Bolton as he's released and waiting trial? That will all be before the judge today, and we are waiting for these proceedings to start any minute now.
All right, I know you'll keep us posted. Caitlin Polans, thanks so much. Wolf?
We'll see what happens. I want to bring in CNN legal and national security analyst Carrie Cordero right now. Carrie, from a national security perspective, how serious are these allegations against Ambassador Bolton?
I think this is a really serious case, and for a few reasons. First of all, the allegations, he was charged with the more serious version of the law, which is under what's called the espionage statutes. He's not accused of actually giving information directly to foreign nationals or another country, but he's charged under that set of statutes, which carries, it's the more serious version of mishandling classified information or national defense information. The indictment is also very detailed, and so it goes document by document and lists the type of classification level. In some cases secret, in some cases top secret, even compartmented information from signals intelligence, so really sensitive stuff. And it details that level of information that the government is alleging the documents that he had written and communicated contained.
And I just want to be precise that it wasn't just top secret information. It was the highest level, SCI, sensitive compartmental information, which reveals sources and methods for the U.S. intelligence community. It's the most sensitive information out there.
It is. And so from the intelligence community's perspective, revelation of that information to people who are not trusted and don't have the security clearances could cause exceptionally grave damage to the U.S. national security. So it's really serious allegations. And the indictment also describes in some detail the type of that sort of information. So in some cases, it looks like to me from the indictment, it comes from signals intelligence. In other cases, from potentially human sources. Information from foreign partners is referenced in this indictment. And so then the argument from the government's perspective is that the release of that information to people who are not trusted and don't have the clearances could potentially jeopardize our international intelligence sharing relationships.
So what are the government is also suggesting, one more point, that he was sharing this information with his wife and daughter on AOL. And at one point, supposedly, according to the government, the Iranians had hacked his AOL account and they were also beginning to get this information.
Right. And so what the indictment says is that he is alleged to have communicated this information, again, to his family members who are obviously not cleared, not in a position to receive that information, both on a AOL account and on a Google account. Obviously, those are unsecured methods of communication. And then he has been targeted over a long time by the Iranian government, both in terms of this hack and in terms of his own physical security. So there are known and reported threats, and he has been targeted by them. So then what happens is, because he had communicated, according to the government, this information in these unsecure methods through email, the argument is that the Iranians then had access to the classified information that he was allegedly communicating.
Yeah, very serious.
Well, and John Bolton, for his part, we should note, he denies any wrongdoing. He says that this is retribution from President Trump. And we have seen President Trump call for the prosecutions of his political foes. Of course, there was that Truth Social post that was then taken down, calling for the Attorney General to go after Letitia James and James Comey. And so now you have this. How could that factor in?
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to separate out, the facts of this case and each individual case from this bigger political issue, which is that the president has been very open about wanting to use the justice system and use the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies. So I think we have to look at each case individually. And so when I look at this case versus, for example, the indictment that was in the Eastern District of Virginia against former Director Comey, that is very slim, just a bare bones indictment, doesn't get into the facts of the investigation. And so you read that indictment and it really does appear that there's not much there, and the government will have to demonstrate what facts it actually has. This is very different. This looks like an extensive investigation that was conducted over time. They conducted the physical search in August of his home, devices. The prosecutors in this case have laid out the underlying information. Now, the government is going to have to prove a lot in this case. So it's not as simple as if there were just marked documents with actual classifications markings on them. In this case, the government is going to have to make the connections between the documents that Bolton is alleged to have communicated, which is his text, his narrative, and then the government, and if this actually were to go to trial, would have to line that up with the actual intelligence briefings or the actual classified documents. So it's not an easy case for the government to make, but the indictment does demonstrate that they have a lot of evidence.
We're told he's now in the courtroom, so we'll see. We assume he's going to plead not guilty in the face of all these charges that he's facing. Each one of them potentially could land him 10 years in jail. If he's convicted on all 18 counts, he could face potentially 180 years in jail if he's convicted on all 18 counts. Investigators, as you know, Carrie, from the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA, the State Department, they've been looking into this case since 2021. So what do you make of the fact that these charges are only being brought now once Trump is back in office?
Well, again, that piece of it, the timing of it, does play into whether the president or the attorney general really pressured in any way the prosecutors in the District of Maryland, where this particular case is, and that out of that U.S. Attorney's Office, to make this case. On the other hand, it does look like this, and as you just described, this investigation has gone on for a long time, and it is not completely unusual in the Justice Department for different senior leaders to look at a case and decide that they want to move forward on it. So there are both of those dynamics at play. We can have both a really long, extensive investigation that ended up revealing this damaging allegations against John Bolton, and we can also have at the same time this obvious political pressure that this particular Justice Department is engaged in.
Carrie Cordero, as usual, thank you very, very much. Pamela.
All right, still ahead here in the Situation Room. We're going to go live to Moscow as Russian leader Vladimir Putin looks ahead to a second summit with
in the indictment, which are clear, well laid out, and serious with supporting evidence. If they're proven true in a court of law beyond a reasonable doubt, I don't think it's going to matter who said what, other than what John Bolton did.
Okay, so everybody please sit tight. We have this breaking news we continue to monitor. We are going to keep our eyes on the courthouse as we wait for confirmation that the hearing is underway. We appreciate all of you. Straight ahead, the entire tone of today's White House meeting with President Zelensky has shifted after a single phone call. Are American-made long-range missiles still an option for Ukraine?
If you have both Medicare and Medicaid, you may be eligible to get extra benefits with the Humana Medicare Advantage Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan. These plans have a $0 monthly plan premium. Most plans include the Humana Healthy Options Allowance. Get over $1,000 a year. That's $85 a month to help pay for covered over-the-counter items like vitamins, pain relievers, first aid supplies, and more. The Healthy Options Allowance is loaded onto a prepaid card each month, and whatever you don't spend carries over from each month. Plus, your doctor, hospital, and pharmacy may already be part of our large Humana networks. So call the number on your screen now and ask about a Humana Medicare Advantage Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan. And remember, annual enrollment ends on December 7th. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
This October at Renewal by Andersen, replace your windows, your patio doors, or your entry door, and we're going to give you an amazing opportunity. You ready? Pay nothing, and I mean zero zilch nada, for 12 months. Just to be clear, that's for a whole year. I'm talking about no deposit, no payments, and no interest until October 2026. We don't know when we'll be able to offer this special financing again, so get in on this while you can. And did you know over 60% of all our customers choose to finance? It just makes sense. But hold on, why choose Renewal by Andersen in the first place? Well, we use an exclusive window frame material. It's called Fibrex. It never needs painting. It's twice as strong as vinyl. And it was designed to handle extreme temperature swings while repelling moisture and the elements. And since windows are the most exposed part of your home, you need a strong window that's built to last. We just tested the windows of one of our first customers, and this is what we found. Renewal by Andersen windows still operate and function smoothly with little to no maintenance after 30 years and counting. And the cherry on top? They're still beautiful. Replace your windows, patio doors, or your front entry door, and there's no deposit, no payments, and no interest until October 2026. Get them now and pay down the line. Before October 31st, save $400 on every window and save $850 on every patio door and entry door with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 12 months. Book a free window and door inspection with us and make sure to call before October 31st to lock in our special financing. 1-800-460-7700.
Febreze. I don't know about y'all, but when it comes to working from home, I gotta have every part of my house clean. That means tidying up, then spraying my Febreze air mist to leave every room smelling fresh and clean. With that done, it's time to get to work.
Entyvio is the only gut-focused treatment for moderate to severe Crohn's and UC. Gut-focused Entyvio works right where you need it to block inflammation in your gut. With a legacy of more than 10 years, Entyvio offers the experience you need, lasting relief and steroid-free remission. And some people experience rapid symptom relief. Infusion and serious allergic reactions can happen during or after treatment. Entyvio may increase risk of infection, which can be serious. Although unlikely, PML, a rare brain infection that can result in death, cannot be ruled out. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, sores, or are prone to infections. Liver problems can occur. With Entyvio, you may be able to pay as little as $5 per dose. Ask your doctor if Entyvio, including the Entyvio pen, is right for you.
Gut focus, Entyvio.
President Trump is preparing to host Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House this afternoon, his third visit to the Oval this year. At the top of Zelensky's agenda, purchasing Tomahawk missiles, the high-powered American-made weapon that could reach deep inside Russia. It's a move that could impact the direction of Russia's war in Ukraine, and something the president has dangled publicly as a possibility for now for weeks. Well, at least he was until the phone call he had yesterday with Russia's President Vladimir Putin, after which he suggested he may hold another in-person summit with Vladimir Putin soon. Joining us now is MSNBC White House reporter Jake Traylor. And Jake, walk us through what we should expect from this bilateral meeting today.
Right. This is the president's third meeting with the Ukrainian president in his second term. And obviously, they were quite contrasting. The first meeting back in February was essentially this yelling match between Trump and Vance versus Putin. Second time around, it was way more amicable just a few months later. If that's kind of the spectrum of where this meeting could go today, I'd say likely we'll see a lot more of this conversation and the relationship between the two looking like that second meeting. Trump's relationship with Putin, Trump's relationship with Zelensky has really shifted over the past few weeks. A lot of that chalked up to the fact that Trump has tried to leverage his relationship with Putin to try and end this war, and ultimately has come to this conclusion that it seems as though Putin's just not quite ready to do that yet. A lot is on the table today. I was speaking with a couple of White House officials who were saying there's land concessions on the table in the discussions today. Trump said in a Truth Social post he intends to talk with Zelensky about speaking with Putin for over 2 hours yesterday and what their conversation looked like. But the biggest thing, as you mentioned, is this talk and this opening of the door of Tomahawk missiles. This is essentially a new level of precision and military offense that the United States is considering leveraging and giving to Ukraine to really take an increased attack on Russia. That's obviously something that Trump knows Putin doesn't want. And so from this conversation today, we expect something that is fruitful, something that leads to some type of militant operation agreement. But where all our eyes are is on this Tomahawk missile. What does it look like for the United States to supply Ukraine with that? And then most importantly, with Putin most certainly watching, what is his response to that as we go forward here?
Jake Traylor, thank you for your reporting. And joining us now is former advisor to President Zelensky, Igor Novikov, and retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. He previously served as the commanding general of the U.S. Army Europe. Igor, how critical, how crucial is this meeting for President Zelensky today, especially on the heels of President Trump's phone call with Putin?
I think it's one of the most important meetings they've ever had, and for a number of reasons. First of all, let's mention the Tomahawk missiles. You know, we have to understand that those missiles are not going to make major difference on the battlefield, although they will help prevent the ongoing humanitarian disaster, because Russia is taking out Ukraine's energy grid at the moment, and the winter is coming. But, you know, the symbolic kind of side of things is incredibly important. For Putin, the first Tomahawk landing in Russian territory is basically a make or break it moment, because the Russian public will not forgive him for that. That's embarrassing for them. But it's also important to see if we can arrive at that ceasefire, because Trump wants to be a peacemaker, and you know, Ukraine's ready to speak with Putin even anywhere, with the exception of Russia and Belarus. And I think having that conversation is better than not having that conversation at the moment. So all eyes of the world on this.
Given Trump's shifting stances, how would you be advising Zelensky right now?
I would be advising him to explain the causality and the importance of keeping the momentum going, because the reason Putin is speaking with President Trump is because he's afraid of the Tomahawk missiles. And now is not the time to let it go. Now is the time to increase the pressure and get that peace deal. Otherwise, Putin will play his delay tactics again, and we'll be back to square one.
General, the president in recent weeks has reportedly been giving some fodder to the idea that he may send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. What would be the implications in your mind? Of course, those missiles can reach deep inside Russia. Walk us through why that weapon would be so crucial on the battlefield and what it could spell for Russia.
Well, of course, the Tomahawk, with its range and its precision, will increase Ukraine's capability for destroying Russia's oil and gas infrastructure. And that really is the vulnerability that the Ukrainians have identified on the Russian side. If they can continue to erode Russia's ability to export oil and gas to China, India, and Turkey and other customers, it becomes increasingly difficult for Russia to finance this war. So that's what this is about. It's knocking down Russia's ability to keep financing the war. Of course, they've had some success with their own drones, but their drones cannot carry the same type of warhead and go quite as far as Tomahawks. To make a difference, so there'll have to be a lot of them, 30 or 40. That will be exactly what Igor said, only symbolic.
Okay, so would it be a wise move for the U.S. to send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, or does that risk escalation here?
This is what the Russians are good at. They make us worry about what they might do instead of them worrying about what we're going to do. Absolutely, we should be providing Tomahawk to Ukraine, a lot of them. And we should also make it very clear that it is our strategic interest that Ukraine actually defeats Russia, make Russia live inside its own borders. The fact is the Russians have been fooling us, or we've allowed them to scare us that they might use a nuclear weapon. Now, how many times have they threatened that since the large-scale invasion, and we fell for it every single time? I have to say that I have zero hope that the administration will actually do this, however. Not once has the administration followed through on any of its threats to inflict consequences on Putin, and the reversal from yesterday's phone call to President Putin does not give me any nuclear weapon. Now, how many times have they threatened that since the large-scale invasion, and we fell for it every single time? I have to say that I have zero hope that the administration will actually do this, however. Not once has the administration followed through on any of its threats to inflict consequences on Putin, and large-scale invasion, and we fell for it every single time. I have to say that I have zero hope that the administration will actually do this, however. Not once has the administration followed through on any of its threats to inflict consequences on Putin, and the reversal from
Igor Novikov and General Ben Hodges, thank you both so much.
through on any of its threats to inflict consequences on Putin, and the reversal from
Igor Novikov and General Ben Hodges, thank you both so much. Up next, back to that Maryland courthouse and the breaking news we continue to follow.
Budapest. But if the pressure is sustained, then there's hope.
It seems as we talk about whether it's in the Middle East or we talk about the Ukraine-Russia situation, the pressure.
Botox cosmetic effects may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox cosmetic if you have skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow, eyelid drooping, or swelling. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, and medications including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
I'm the one and only Delphina.
I'm the one and only Olivia. And I'm the one and only Claire. And I got treated with the one and only Botox Cosmetic.
Find a licensed Botox Cosmetic specialist at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Our right to reproductive health care is being stolen from us.
I can't believe this is the world we live in, where we're losing the freedom to control our own bodies.
We need your support now more than ever. Go online, call, or scan this code with your $19 monthly gift, and we'll send you this Care No Matter What t-shirt.
It is your right to have safe health care. That's it.
Go online, call, or scan right now.
Finally, a platform that thinks like you. The new Power E-Trade Pro gives you nearly unlimited customization, with up to 120 tools and charts across 6 workspaces, plus automatic pattern recognition from the original place to trade online.
Did you know 80% of women are struggling with hair damage, just like I was?
Pantene Miracle Rescue Deep Conditioner with Melting Pro V Pearls.
Locks in moisture to repair 6 months of damage for resilient, healthy-looking hair. If you know it's Pantene.
For a limited time, save up to 50% on select styles of beautiful new carpet, hardwood, vinyl, and laminate flooring from Empire today. Plus, we'll beat any competitor's offer, guaranteed. And our price includes everything, installed flooring and even furniture moving. Get Empire's Home Floor Advantage and save up to 50% off. Visit EmpireToday.com or give us a call to schedule your free estimate. You know the number.
800-588-2300 Today. This is a Morgan & Morgan airbag alert. I'm Matt Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. Your car steering wheel could be a ticking time bomb. At least 24 people have died and many more injured because their airbags fired shrapnel at them upon inflating. Others have suffered skull fractures, lacerations, and other injuries. Tens of millions of cars have been recalled. The airbag recall is the largest automotive recall in history. If you or someone you know suffered hearing loss, vision loss, broken bones, cuts that required stitches, or if a loved one was killed in a crash involving a deployed airbag, please contact us today for a free, no-obligation case review. You could be owed money for medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering, and other damages. You pay nothing unless we recover money for you. All law firms are not the same. There's only one Morgan & Morgan.
Call 800-790-3030. That's 800-790-3030. Call now.
Nobody really wanted to go work for Martin Luther King. He had been stabbed, bombed, jailed, and he didn't have any money. If I had to take a few kicks and licks to get a Civil Rights Act, I'd do it any day of the week. That's what I call the dirty work.
We are back now with breaking news coverage at the federal courthouse in Maryland, where John Bolton was just arraigned and just pleaded not guilty. He was just before a judge facing 18 felony counts related to his handling of classified material. Still with us, Ken Delanian, Lisa Rubin, Susan Filan, Tevedayo Aganga Williams, and MSNBC legal analyst Charles Coleman is now back at the desk with us as well. Ken, bring us up to speed. What just happened in that courthouse?
Yeah, Ariel, so unexpectedly they combined an arraignment with the initial appearance, and so they did read the charges, and he pled not guilty to all 18 counts. Our producer in the courtroom said he expressed no emotion, no expression really on his face, conferred with his lawyer, Abby Lowell, who patted him on the back once as they sat down at the defense table. So when, as expected, you know, it's a formality, and now the case will really begin in earnest, and no doubt the defense will have a number of discovery requests as they try to understand exactly what evidence the prosecution has in this case. Again, an 18-count indictment against John Bolton. He has pleaded not guilty to all 18 counts.
All right, Susan, what does that say to you that there was a surprise arraignment today and a plea?
Doesn't say anything to me. Very often they combine a presentment with an arraignment. It's just a technical formality. Why not do it all at once instead of bringing him back? I didn't hear anything about bond, so I'm assuming that he was released on his own recognizance. But that in and of itself doesn't say anything to me other than the judge is getting on with it.
Okay, so Temadayo, we were talking in the previous segment about the fact that President Trump has been out loud criticizing Bolton. Is that going to factor into this case at all?
So I think it's going to factor into motion practice. I mean, there appears to be very strong evidence against him. So his lawyers are going to be looking to every angle they can get, whether it's a motion to dismiss these charges for selective prosecution or vindictive prosecution. I think the challenge here is that those are really, really high bars. I don't think they have enough here. And notably, President Trump has actually spoken a little less about John Bolton as compared to Comey, where he openly called for charges. So I think here, John Bolton is going to have to defend himself on the evidence, most likely. And I expect this case is going to progress like a typical criminal case, and he might end up having to decide to plead guilty or go to trial.
Okay, so Lisa, run us through the steps now that we have a not guilty plea. We have had the arraignment. It was all combined. Where do we go from here?
Well, the next thing that will happen is we're going to have some motion practice and we're going to have discovery. And of course, the burden is on the government to share with John Bolton discovery that will allow him to defend himself, including all information that would exculpate him or tend to exculpate him, both with respect to the crime itself as well as to potential sentencing. Those are the government's Brady obligations, and we should look to how soon the judge in this case is going to demand that the government produce its Brady materials to John Bolton. Then they may set a schedule for pretrial motions. One of the things we don't know, and I think Susan mentioned this, is at an arraignment, sometimes some judges will set the pretrial schedule right then and there. They'll ask the government, when are you prepared to try this case? How long do you think the trial will be? And then there is a back and forth between the two sides about how long they think they're going to need to prepare for trial. That may be going on right now in a courtroom. We can't see it, obviously, because we have no remote access. But I'll be really interested to see how much volume of discovery the government says they have, particularly since they did a search of John Bolton's home and his office, where among the things they took away were not only multiple computers, but thumb drives, other devices. What did they harvest from there that's relevant to John Bolton's case? We know that at least some of the stuff that ended up in the indictment, they say so in the indictment, they took through that search of his home, and that includes physical and electronic materials.
Charles, your take on what you're going to want to see going forward.
The scope of discovery in terms of how they handle it. This is a case that ultimately does involve a conversation around sensitive materials, and I also am very curious as to how the narrative unfolds around the previous investigation that ultimately the Department of Justice decided not to go forward, and what new information, or if any new information, came out that led us to this point. So the chronology of how things developed, and then also what information was gleaned by the Department of Justice to make them make this decision at this point. At some point, that is going to be a critical piece of how the defense basically builds their case to try and make a selective prosecution argument. Like Temadayo said, it is a very high bar, so I don't necessarily know that they're going to hit it, but certainly everything that they will need to try and establish it will be gleaned during discovery.
And Tim, this hinges on willfulness. Explain what that means.
So anytime you prove a criminal case, you have to prove intent, right? You have to intend to commit a crime. So when you're talking about, for example, retaining classified documents, if I had a classified document, I took it in my bag, I had no idea, someone finds it, that's not going to be sufficient to convict me of that crime. But willful retention, right? I know I had it, and I intended to keep it in my possession, knowing that it was unlawful. That's what the government's going to have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's going to be very important on those devices Lisa talked about. State of mind. What was John Bolton thinking when he's on television talking about Hillary Clinton's server, expressing that people don't follow classified rules? He understands the rules apply to him. above all else, he was a national security advisor. Does anyone else understand more the importance of the sensitivity of these documents than him? I don't think so. So I think the government has a lot of evidence there.
And with him, we're talking about an AOL account, possible messaging services that are clearly civilian mechanisms. Susan, this seems like it's going to be an uphill battle for John Bolton because it seems as though a national security advisor, as you kind of referenced in our previous segment, should be able to write the textbook on not providing this kind of sensitive material further than it should go.
Yeah, I mean, he could really be the NSA professor here. And I think when you look at some of the allegations in the indictment where he says that he's disseminating this information to the two unnamed individuals, individual one and individual two, don't repeat this. And the text back is, shh. How are you then going to say, well, I didn't know, I wasn't doing it intentionally, I wasn't doing it willfully? I think it is pot calling the kettle black. For him to say, I didn't know, is the least credible posture he can take in this case.
So we had a very interesting conversation in the break. We'll clue our viewers in on this. It appears in the correspondence with the relatives that John Bolton likely knew that this information should not have been spread further, that there was sort of an attempt to say, don't share this, and then there was a sort of tongue-in-cheek shh that in the response. But explain to us why that could or could not factor in here.
So the power of a document like that or evidence like that is really the government's ability to get it into evidence at trial. And that is, as we all know at this table, going to be a function of the witnesses that are able to authenticate that document. In plain English, what it means is that if I'm having a conversation with another individual and that conversation is private, either of us has to be able to take the stand to say, I had this conversation with this person, or I received this communication from this person. You cannot compel John Bolton to testify because he has a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. And with respect to his family, it's possible that they could be compelled to testify, but it's very unlikely. So the question becomes, with a communication like that, who is the witness that you're going to use to authenticate it? Certainly, you could use the FBI, perhaps, to say that they got it through the investigation. But if you're not hearing from either of the individuals who are participating in the conversation, it loses its emphasis. And the jury has to sort of take it at the four corners of the document, which could be good or bad, depending on who you're talking about. But certainly what you will not have happen is John Bolton get on the stand, see this, and as Susan said, say, oh, I only told them to shush because I didn't want it known, but at the same time, I didn't know that these weren't things that they were supposed to talk about. So
that's not going to work.
That's absolutely not going to happen.
Okay, so we talk about these family members, and my question to you, Lisa, is could his family members be in trouble on this one?
Well, it's interesting because in the search warrant affidavit that was filed in the District of Maryland, you know, when you file a search warrant affidavit and you're asking a judge for permission to go and search particular premises, you have to list the crimes that you're looking into. And one of the things that was listed in one of them was a conspiracy under the Espionage Act, perhaps because of the involvement of individuals 1 and 2. But if you read the indictment, they say individual 1, individual 2, who are related to Bolton and whose identities are known to the grand jury. My guess is they have no desire to implicate either one of them. Could there have been discussions with John Bolton prior to the charges about the fact that his wife and his daughter could have been charged? Yes, that's a possibility. Oftentimes, prosecutors will have conversations with people about the culpability of their family members. We have talked about that ad infinitum about Michael Cohen, for example, and his wife, who faced possible criminal exposure with respect to crimes that weren't ultimately charged. But here, I don't think that that is the case. And I'll give you one big caveat, Ariel. I am sitting here looking at the docket for this case as we're on air, and there is now a notice of a related case that is sealed. What that means, I don't know. Could that mean there are related charges against somebody else in the District of Maryland? Could that mean that there are criminal charges pending against John Bolton somewhere else other than the District of Maryland? I will flag for you and our viewers that in the indictment, they talk about the fact that the indictment is based on physical and electronic evidence collected at John Bolton's own house, which is in the District of Maryland. But that says nothing about what was collected from his office, which is in the District of Columbia. So I'm going to be pressing refresh on that docket number 6 again and again and again until we have an answer to that
I was going to clue our viewers in that usually when you're on the phone, you're not distracted. You're definitely dialed into what's going on in the segments here. So tell us, Timoteo, you were talking about the politicization of the justice system. We have talked about this as a running theme. We have seen the indictments of Tish James. We've seen the indictments of James Comey. How is this different, and how is it a yes and situation?
So it's a yes and, because the question of whether the DOJ is acting at the behest of a vindictive president who's seeking political retribution, that is one overlay that you see consistent between this case, Comey, and James. I think what's different about this case is all the things you mentioned. This is led by career prosecutors. It does not have this, it has actual evidence. It does not have the same, I think, corrupt nature we see with the other cases. But zooming out, the problem is that that's hard to see unless you're folks like us who are truly in the weeds. What it looks like is that the executive has commented on ongoing criminal investigations and that the employees in the DOJ are doing the bidding of senior leadership. I think that's dangerous. I think that undermines the confidence that the lay people, everyday people, can look and believe that the Justice Department is impartial. Here, frankly, John Bolton looks like he's in a whole lot of trouble. And I think without the broader context of the Trump infusion, I don't know that we'd be talking about John Bolton with this framework at all. I think we would be saying that John Bolton got indicted for inappropriately handling classified information, full stop. Now we're talking about vindictive prosecution, selective prosecution, the impartiality of the DOJ, the president, whether the president will be speaking about his future. All these things should not be the case, but here they are.
And Susan, just to hammer that home, there's the perception that the public may have of the DOJ, the weaponization of the DOJ, and then there's the legal implications here of this politicized environment. How does that affect the cases that we're going to see going forward, whether it's Comey and James or whether it's this case?
I don't personally think that the weaponization argument is going to go very far in this case at all. I think even if you come at this thinking justice has gotten weaponized and prosecutions are now political, you read this indictment and you go, uh-oh. No matter who this person is, who he served, who doesn't like him, who's mad at him, this guy looks like he did something pretty illegal, and it had consequences. This isn't just a na-na-na-na-na. This could have potentially harmed and threatened our country, our national security, by a guy who preaches that he knows better and everybody ought to also know better. So again, regardless, I think when you read this indictment just on its face by itself, it's very troubling.
Charles, a final thought for the moment on the national security implications of all of these cases we're now seeing with classified documents.
This is a very serious matter, and this is not something that we can simply subscribe to being political prosecution, despite the fact that we have now seen a string of Donald Trump's enemies be in crosshairs legally and with the DOJ. This is something different. And the magnitude of what we're talking about here, quite frankly, even you might struggle to make some parallels to Mar-a-Lago and the hidden documents cases there, because this is something that you're talking about with respect to the NSA director, the head of national security, who knew better, who in writing has told close family members, shh, like, let's keep this under wraps, and had these documents, you know, in places, or was transmitting this information, and then went further to let the FBI know my email, which I should not have been using to transmit this information, had been hacked, and had been hacked by one of our adversaries on a global scale. So the implications here are very, very significant and should not necessarily be just passed off to this is another one of Donald Trump's enemies that the DOJ is going after, because that's not really the story that is taking place here.
So just to clue our viewers in, if they're just now joining us, we just saw former National Security Advisor John Bolton plead not guilty to 18 felony counts related to his handling of classified material. We're keeping a live look there in Maryland, and we'll be right back on the other side of this break. Thanks to our panel.
Thanks, Ariel.
Your home is your happy place until you come back to bad odors. Use Febreze plug-in. It has a microchip that alternates between 2 scents to fight odors and provide freshness for up to 50 days. Try Febreze Plug.
We are living with AFib, and over 500,000 of us have left blood thinners behind for life. We've cut our stroke risk and said goodbye to our bleeding worry with the Watchman implant. Watchman, it's one time for a lifetime.
Still dealing with moderate to severe ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease symptoms despite treatment? Put them in check with Rinvoq. Rinvoq works differently, and it's a once daily pill.
When symptoms tried to take control, I got rapid relief with Rinvoq. Check.
Rinvoq helped visibly repair my intestinal lining. Check.
I got lasting steroid-free remission with Rinvoq. Check.
Rapid symptom relief. visible repair of the intestinal lining.
And lasting steroid-free remission. Check, check, and check.
Rinvoq can lower ability to fight infections. Before treatment, test for TB and do blood work. Serious infections, blood clots, some fatal. Cancers including lymphoma and skin. Serious allergic reactions, GI tears, death, heart attack, and stroke occurred. CV event risk increases in age 50 plus with a heart disease risk factor. Tell your doctor if you've had these events, infection, Hep B or C, smoked, are pregnant, or planning. Don't take if allergic or have an infection.
Put UC and Crohn's in check and keep them there with Rinvoq.
Ask your gastroenterologist about Rinvoq and learn how AbbVie can help you save.
The best moments deserve the best eggs, especially when they're Eggland's Best. Tastes so deliciously fresh, with better nutrition too. We love our eggs any style, as long as they're the best. Eggland's Best.
You can get this fixed now and pay later. You can get this fixed now and pay later. And this. Get it fixed now and pay later in 4 interest-free payments at SafeLight.com.
SafeLight Repair, SafeLight Replace.
David trusts Prevagen for his brain, and this is his story.
Nice to meet you. My name is David. I've been a pharmacist for 44 years. When I have customers come in, I recommend Prevagen. Number one, because it's effective, does not require a prescription, and I've been taking it quite a while myself, and I love it when the customers come back in and tell me, David, that really works so good for me. Makes my day.
Prevagen has been the #1 selling brain supplement nationwide for over 10 years.
Okay, man. Oh, we need to vaporize that sore throat with Vapo Cool Drops. It's sore throat relief with a rush of Vicks Vapors. Let's go, let's go, let's go! Ah!
Vaporize sore throat pain with Vicks Vapo Cool Drops.
For gentle, dependable constipation relief, try Senecot. It works differently than other laxatives because it's made from the senna plant, a natural vegetable laxative ingredient. Gentle, dependable, Senecot. Also available in great-tasting gummies and soft chews.
AI can turn your lights on.
Lights on.
And drive your car. And even write your kid's essay. But AI ain't gonna fix your broken water line or pay for the big repair bill. Having a plan from HomeServe offers real solutions. And when a covered system breaks, we'll send a qualified contractor and pay for the repair. There's nothing artificial about the peace of mind you get with a plan from HomeServe. Getting one is quite intelligent.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $4.99 a month.
Call 1-833-812-1903 or visit homeserve.com.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rose Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Sildenafil starts things off strong, and Tadalafil stays in your system for longer. More confidence, more control. Rose Sparks. Connect with a provider at ro.co/sparks.
Breaking news now. We are monitoring a very tense situation on the ground in Illinois where we're seeing protesters clash with officials outside of an ICE facility in Broadview. Several of them taken away in a van earlier this morning. Joining us now, MSNBC's Rosa Flores keeping an eye on this. Rosa, what's happening there in Broadview right now?
Ariel, good morning. We have new information just into our newsroom about the arrests being made. As you just mentioned, there have been clashes earlier today there in Broadview, Illinois, outside the ICE facility. You can see in some of these images at some points the state police and other law enforcement in a line formation moving, advancing towards protesters. And at points in time, those protesters on the ground getting zip-tied and then taken away. Now, this information, according to the Cook County Sheriff's Office, as of 10 a.m. this morning, 9 arrests have been made. The ages of those arrested are between the ages of 25 and 44. The charges are pending. The charging agency is Illinois State Police. Now, we've seen these types of eruptions outside the ICE facility for about a month now. I was in Chicago last week, earlier this week as well. I've talked to some of the protesters out there, some of them who have been protesting for about a month outside that facility. And many of them tell me that they are fed up with the enhanced immigration enforcement by the Trump administration, and they feel compelled to be outside this facility. For the most part, the protests are peaceful. We have seen people with signs, singing, chanting, sometimes even dressed in costumes, simply exercising their First Amendment rights. Many of them that I talked to said that they're also out there because they feel that they are speaking out for the immigrant community that's in Chicago, that is in hiding. Many of those individuals are immigrants, perhaps too afraid to go to school or to go to the grocery store. They're staying cooped up in their homes. And so individuals who are U.S. citizens there in Chicago are out protesting outside this facility to bring attention to the enhanced tactics used by ICE. And Ariel, we're probably going to see a lot more of these protests this weekend, of course, with the No Kings protest coming up on Saturday. And we won't just see it in Chicago, but in cities across the country.
That situation clearly devolving since we talked to you last. Rosa, MSNBC's Rosa Flores, thank you so much. And we're going to go back to John Bolton's indictment and his not guilty plea. We have some new reporting from inside the DOJ. Stay close.
You'll find them in cities, towns, and suburbs all across America. Millions of people who have Medicare and Medicaid, but may be missing benefits they could really use. Extra benefits they may be eligible to receive at no extra cost. And if you have Medicare and Medicaid, you may be able to get extra benefits too through a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan. These plans have a $0 monthly plan premium. Call now to see if you qualify. With a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan, you could have doctor, hospital, and prescription drug coverage, plus extra benefits in one convenient plan. Most plans include the Humana Healthy Options Allowance. Get over $1,000 a year. That's $85 a month to help pay for covered over-the-counter items like vitamins, pain relievers, first aid supplies, and more. Your allowance is conveniently loaded onto a prepaid card each month, and whatever you don't spend gets carried over to the next month. Ask us about all the items your allowance may cover. Plus, you could get other important benefits. All plans include dental coverage with $0 copays for covered preventive services, vision coverage, including eye exams, and a yearly allowance to use towards eyewear, and hearing benefits with routine hearing exams and coverage toward hearing aids. Plus, hundreds of prescriptions have a $0 copay, so you'll pay nothing for them all year long. And you'll have access to Humana's multiple large plan networks of doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies. Best of all, if you have Medicare and Medicaid, you may be eligible to enroll in a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan right now. So if you have Medicare and Medicaid, call now to see if there's a plan in your area that could give you extra benefits. But now is the time. The annual enrollment period ends December 7th. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points per second and quickly alerts you to identity threats you could miss, like changes to your investment accounts, home title, and loans opened in your name, right on your phone. LifeLock. Join today.
Sarah Benzino, Brandon Coley, Jablonski Auto Body, LLC.
Yeah! Woo! What'd she call Harper?
Oh, you mean Jablonski Auto Body, LLC.
We actually sold the Twins naming rights.
You know, like stadiums do. Kids are so expensive these days. Here he comes.
Oasis Breeze Tan and Spa.
Woo!
If you need a tan, I'm your man.
Could do business with you.
Or we can look at some investment options for you.
Works for us.
The right money moves aren't as absurd as you think.
Tired of body pain holding you back? Try Aleve for longer-lasting pain relief. Unlike Tylenol and Advil, just one dose of Aleve provides up to 12 hours of relief from all types of body pain. Try Aleve.
We are continuing to follow the breaking news. John Bolton pleading not guilty in court just moments ago on charges alleging that he mishandled classified information. It comes as we are learning new details about what career federal prosecutors are describing as an intense pressure campaign from the White House to go after President Trump's political foes and critics. Back with us now, MSNBC's Lisa Rubin and former federal prosecutor Temidayo Aganga-Williams. Lisa, you have some new reporting on this so-called pressure campaign that's happening within the DOJ. Tell us more about what your sources are telling you.
Well, our sources, and this reporting is with Carol Lenny, Ken Delanian, and our colleague Vaughn Hilliard, is really talking about half dozen U.S. attorneys' offices where there is pressure coming onto them, either from Main Justice or even from the White House, to bring what we would call White House-directed prosecutions. And as a result of these, you see in many of these cases career prosecutors who are serving as office supervisors leaving the offices because they just can't or won't do the things that are being expected of them. In our article, we talk about a guy named John Hooks in the District of D.C. who was largely understood to have quit the office recently, but that's not really the entire story. He got into a skirmish with Jeanine Pirro because she was impatient about the progress of certain I'll call them White House special projects. And according to our reporting, John Hooks said he would stay until the end of October. He showed up back at the office for the rest of the week, showed up at a party, and was promptly handed a letter firing him from the office. And that is happening, Ariel, in U.S. attorneys' offices all throughout the country. Similar crises of confidence and conscience.
Yeah, and we've talked about attrition from other critical facets of government. And here, I just wonder, Tamayo, how concerning it is that we might not only see a brain drain, but an impartiality drain from the DOJ.
Yeah, I think in every DOJ, I mean, I served in Trump 1 as a federal prosecutor. The priorities of the White House and administration matter, right? Prosecutors focus on that. The office, it matters what the administration wants. But at the core of the mission, it's really about those prosecutors on the ground deciding what matters for their district and the people that they serve. And that's what guides the justice that I think those prosecutors do day to day. What we're seeing now that's so different, I think, it will be a kind of preemptive compliance, that prosecutors will know that if I want to get ahead, or the kind of cases that I will get approved are going to be cases that are aligned with the political objectives of administration, not the objectives about safety, not the objectives about bringing down violent crime. So you may be saying, you know what, I see a political target, that person's a Democrat, maybe I should be prosecuting them. That person's a Republican or aligned with the president, maybe that's not the kind of case we do in our public integrity section. And that's dangerous for everyone.
It's almost like a confirmation bias in a way. Lisa, you also have reporting on acting U.S. Attorney in Maryland, Kelly Hayes, and the pressure that she felt to bring this Bolton case to the forefront. Tell us more.
I think Kelly Hayes is under pressure on multiple fronts, not only to bring this Bolton case, but also with respect to Adam Schiff and Lisa Cook, both of whom are residents of the District of Maryland, and where the mortgage fraud allegations against both of those people lie. Kelly Hayes felt that this was a case that she could bring in good conscience. She did so with the support of career prosecutors. Perhaps Kelly Hayes believed that in bringing this case, she could also hold off some of the pressure on her and her office to bring cases that don't necessarily strike them as sound. But one of the things that Tim said I really want to illustrate, Ariel, it really highlights how much discretion is invested in Department of Justice prosecutors, even line prosecutors, and why it is that their experience and their impartiality are core to their doing the job. Because just because you can prosecute a case doesn't mean you should. And the Justice Manual, which is like the Bible for prosecutors, has all sorts of guidance to them about when a case should be considered just, righteous, and in the public interest. I worry that those factors, as the leading factors for prosecutors, are disappearing as they understand what the priorities of the administration are, and as the administration infects the decision-making processes of U.S. attorneys' offices that until now have largely been impervious to what the administration may have wanted or what their policy objectives were at Main Justice with respect to the policymaking arm of the Department of Justice.
So, Tim, give us your thoughts as a closing way that we should be looking at what we're seeing unfold there in Maryland today and the other implications of the DOJ's decision-making.
You know, I think what we have to keep doing is looking at the details, right? We have to have the ability to look at cases like James Comey and separate those from cases like John Bolton, right? Not all these cases are going to be kind of steeped in this problematic framework. We've seen that with the first two cases. But above all else, I think to those who are in the Department of Justice, what I hope to see is that we don't have that brain drain, that the line assistants stay in those jobs, because these people, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, I serve with both, they are focused on being impartial and doing what's right. And I think the most dangerous thing long-term for the country in this is if these folks leave and folks who come in with a different kind of guise in what they're doing, it's dangerous for all of us.
John Bolton on his way out of that courthouse in Maryland after pleading not guilty to those 18 charges. That does it for us today. I'm Ariel Reshef. Alex Witt picks up our coverage next.
Mr. Bolton, you're a joke. If you believe that your body is your own and that reproductive health care is health care, then donate to Planned Parenthood and put your values into action. Efforts to shut us down have already put 200 health centers at risk of closing. Go online, call, or scan this code to donate $19 a month right now, and we'll send you this Care No Matter What t-shirt. This is the time to show up for your values before it's too late. Go online, call, or scan this code.
Even on an antidepressant, there are days I feel stuck in my head. Depression symptoms, like lack of interest and negative thoughts, can hold me back. I wanted to break through. I asked about Vraylar. Adding Vraylar to an antidepressant significantly reduces overall depression symptoms better than an antidepressant alone.
Not for elderly with dementia-related psychosis due to increased risk of death or stroke. Report changes in behavior or suicidal thoughts to your doctor. Antidepressants may increase these in those under 25. Report fever, stiff muscles, or confusion, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may not go away. High blood sugar may lead to coma or death. Weight gain and high cholesterol may occur. Difficulty moving, uncontrolled movements, tremors, feeling like you need to move, nausea, constipation, insomnia, dizziness, increased appetite, and fatigue are common. Side effects may not appear for weeks.
Vraylar, breaking through to relief. Ask about Vraylar.
No matter what you drive, there's only one guarantee. It's gonna break down.
I had a sensor light up on my dashboard. $2,600.
But if you've got Endurance, you could never pay out of pocket for a car repair again.
In my first year with Endurance, they covered a $14,000 engine replacement.
It was like almost a $6,000 job. Endurance covered it.
With Endurance, your car's most expensive parts are covered, plus hundreds more.
I got a check engine light and a huge bill to fix it. Endurance covered it fully.
I just call Endurance, tell them what my customer needs, and Endurance takes care of it.
If your car's under 20 years old, Endurance has you covered with unlimited miles.
So, who's gonna pay for your next breakdown? You?
Or Endurance.
Right now, you can get $300 off any plan, plus a year of elite benefits, a $2,000 value, free, all backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call 1-855-941-6538 for a free quote.
Oh no! Our water line broke. It could cost a fortune to get a contractor to come fix it, and it's not covered by homeowners insurance.
That's why you should have HomeServe.
It's the emergency of HomeServe.
When your water line breaks, HomeServe sends a qualified contractor to fix it and pays for the covered repairs.
With HomeServe, the American dream of owning a home doesn't need to be a nightmare.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $4.99 a month.
Call 1-888-246-2612 or visit homeserve.com.
Another day in the finance department. Wait, did we pay this already? 6070 airfare, 6040 meals and entertainment. Receipts, expense reports, invoices, purchase orders. What's that? Ramp? Cards with built-in policies. Expenses that submit themselves. Look at it go. Okay, what does it code automatic? Oh. We're fixing the parts of finance you hate. Ramp. Love finance.
A very good day to all of you. I'm Alex Witt in for Chris Jansing. The case against John Bolton, the Trump appointee turned sharp critic, faces a judge for the first time and pleads not guilty to charges he illegally and repeatedly shared national secrets with members of his family. The details from the indictment and what just happened in court. Plus, war and peace. The president is about to sit down one-on-one with Volodymyr Zelensky, who's pushing for more money and missiles to help fight Russia. Trump seemed open to it at one point, but after his conversation with Vladimir Putin, is that still the case? And the battle for the Big Apple. Zoran Mamdani's opponents needed to land a knockout blow during last night's mayoral debate if they have any hope of catching him in the polls. So did they do it? Lots to get to on this Friday, but we're going to start with former National Security Advisor John Bolton's arraignment in Maryland. He pleaded not guilty to 18 counts of illegally collecting and transmitting national defense information, allegedly about everything from U.S. covert actions to foreign adversaries. Now, Bolton, who worked in the first Trump administration for just over 17 months, surrendered to authorities this morning. The charges, which could effectively land Bolton behind bars for the rest of his life, revolve around diaries the government claims contain national secrets that Bolton shared with both his wife and daughter. Now, Bolton insists he is just being targeted because he has criticized President Trump. Quote, "These charges are not just about his focus on me or my diaries, but his intensive effort to intimidate his opponents, to ensure that he alone determines what is said about his conduct." And here's what the president said about the charges yesterday.
John Bolton was just indicted by a grand jury in Maryland. Do you have a reaction to that?
I didn't know that. You tell me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but that's the way it goes.
Case against him?
That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it goes.
So I have got a great team to break this down for us. From outside the courthouse, we have MSNBC Legal Affairs reporter Fallon Gallagher and MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian. Sarah Matthews served as Deputy Press Secretary in the first Trump administration. She is with me. And in studio, we have MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin and MSNBC legal analyst and former Manhattan Assistant DA Catherine Christian. I said it was a great panel. So here we go. Fallon, starting with you. What happened in court?
Yeah, Alex, the whole thing was very quick, lasting just about 13 minutes. Now, this was Bolton's initial appearance in court, so it's the first time we saw him in a courtroom in front of the magistrate judge. But the judge also combined his arraignment, so that means that Bolton pled not guilty today in front of this judge. Now, that came after the judge read all 18 counts, those first 8, which are about the transmission of national defense information, and then the second 10, which are about the retention of that information. Mr. Bolton said that he understood what those charges meant. He pled not guilty, and then they got into some more procedural stuff, some scheduling matters as we move forward, but no trial date has been set yet.
All right, so let's talk about the details in this indictment, Ken, because there's a lot of them there. Tell us what the big picture reveals.
Well, Alex, the big picture is that the Justice Department is accusing John Bolton of transmitting more than 1,000 pages, chock-a-block with national security, highly classified information to his wife and daughter in real time while he was working as national security advisor, while he was sitting in highly sensitive meetings in the Situation Room. Now, they don't tell us what this material is, but they characterize it as having to do with things like foreign leader intentions. And they say that he prefaced some of his statements by saying, for example, the intel briefer said, or in the Situation Room, I heard. And so making it clear that he knew that this was sensitive information. And some of this information did not end up in his book or even in the proposed manuscript of his book. And so it's painting a picture here that he was transmitting this information over an unsecure email account and a messaging system. And then they say that the government of Iran hacked at least one of those email accounts and so therefore obtained that information, which would be extremely damaging to the United States. And so they've charged him with 18 counts under the Espionage Act of mishandling classified information. Each count carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. So this is a very, very serious case. Of course, John Bolton claiming that he did nothing wrong. His lawyer says that this material was not classified. It was simply a diary. And they believe that he's being persecuted because he's been an outspoken critic of Donald Trump, Alex.
So, Lisa,
where he kept the notes and who he shared them with, according to the government, is the problem. So the Espionage Act punishes both lawful possession and unauthorized removal or sharing of national defense information. It also penalizes having unauthorized possession and either sharing or retaining it. And in Bolton's case, he's accused of both. He's accused of sharing the information with his wife and daughter at a period of time where he was authorized to have the information, but not transmit it to people who themselves didn't have the necessary security clearances to review it or to see it. Similarly, after he was no longer the national security advisor, he had a skiff in his home. The indictment talks about the fact that they come and they decommission the skiff, meaning his home is no longer a safe or authorized place to store classified or sensitive information. Notwithstanding that, after that period of time, John Bolton retains sensitive, classified information, not only in his Maryland home and not only physically, but electronically. And he does it in an office that he's maintained in D.C. since 2014, they say. And that's what led to the feds filing 2 search warrant applications and on August 22nd going to both his home and office and taking a bunch of these things away. That's really at the heart of this case. But as Ken has noted, lots of people keep notes. Lots of people in the national security establishment write books. It's the flagrancy with which John Bolton shared this information with his wife and daughter over unauthorized channels. And most importantly, there's a portion of the indictment where they talk about when John Bolton was hacked by somebody close to the Iranian Republic. His lawyer goes to the FBI and says, this happened. But they never tell the FBI what John Bolton was using the account for. They don't disclose that he had shared scores of classified and or sensitive information with unauthorized people through his email. In fact, what they do is they share the email, the threatening email that comes in from the hacker with the FBI. And then what they do after that is they say Bolton's going to delete his whole account. And that is a part of the indictment here.
So, and can I add, these were contemporaneous notes, meaning he's sitting in a meeting and he's sending them to his wife and his daughter. So it's not just
that doesn't look good.
It's one thing taking notes for your own edification. It's another thing to be in a meeting and sending contemporaneous notes. So there is no privilege. There's no exception to the confidential top secret rule. It's okay if you send it to your spouse or your kid. So that's also what makes it so flagrant. Allegedly, if he did this. So,
Catherine, he has a well-known and formidable attorney representing him. This is Abby Lowell. I want to read what he said. Here's the quote. The underlying facts in this case were investigated and resolved years ago. These charges stem from portions of Ambassador Bolton's personal diaries over his 45-year career, records that are unclassified, shared only with his immediate family, and known to the FBI as far back as 2021. So unpack that for me. If that's true, why now?
Well, 2 things can be true at the same time. One, President Trump called him a bad person. He clearly is a perceived enemy of President Trump. The other thing can be true is John Bolton allegedly committed crimes. This indictment is very different than James, and I believe that Mr. Lower also represents A.G. James and Comey. These are experienced prosecutors who brought this indictment. It was a long-term investigation. Mr. Lowell may think it had been concluded, but I can tell you prosecutors rarely will say, oh, don't worry about it, the case is over. So this was a long-term investigation by career prosecutors. So these were not former insurance lawyers. These were search warrants that were executed, that were authorized by a court. So a court, a federal magistrate judge, deemed there was probable cause. The allegations in this indictment, and they're just allegations, are substantial and detailed. And what's hard, and of course they still have to prove it for Mr. Bolton, is the indictment starts off basically giving his bio. This is a career national security person. He knows the definition of top secret. Sure. He knows that that would cause grave harm to national security if it was revealed. It uses his own public statements. I confirmed with Lisa that he went on TV in 2017 and, called to task Hillary Clinton when she was accused of keeping information. So he knew. Now, yes, he clearly is a perceived enemy of Donald Trump. That's true. And that may be used as part of a motion to dismiss an indictment, but it certainly is not as strong as James Comey and Letitia James' motions.
And you make the point that he has talked a lot about this in public. We're going to play something in just a moment as I ask you this question, Sarah. The indictment makes a point of saying that Bolton is indeed well aware of all these rules around handling sensitive information. And in fact, let's take the example of Signalgate. When that one happened, he talked about that one a lot. Here's the clip.
It never would have occurred to me to discuss anything sensitive, whether classified or not, anything sensitive, anything potentially sensitive on any system other than government's own secure telecommunications system, which we have spent decades and billions of dollars to perfect. I just can't conceive it. My brain doesn't get it.
So look, he clearly knew the rules. Does it make sense to you, Sarah, that he would then knowingly break those rules by repeatedly sharing classified information over and over for 7 years?
Yeah, it appears that John Bolton has a lot of egg on his face. Obviously, you could go back in the archives and pull up plenty of interviews of him criticizing the Signalgate controversy, where we saw Pete Hegseth and J.D. Vance communicating war plans over Signal, or even the current president himself and John Bolton being critical of him willfully retaining classified information next to toilets at Mar-a-Lago. And so then for him to be communicating classified information with family members over an unsecure network, it doesn't look good for him. There's no way to slice it. The details of this indictment do not look good. And obviously, he is a, quote, perceived enemy of the current president. But his indictment is different than that of the charges that James Comey and Letitia James are facing. Obviously, with those cases, you have a newly appointed Lindsay Halligan in that role, an insurance lawyer who is a Trump sycophant, and those cases appear weak. But when you look at the details of the indictment with John Bolton, he certainly is someone who knew better. And so it's going to be interesting to hear the defense that him and his lawyers come up with.
Mm-hmm. So, Ken, I'm curious what's next, because it's our understanding there's no court date set. Is there a reason for that?
That's just procedural, Alex. What's next in this case is the defense is going to make some discovery demands on the government so they can get a handle on what exactly is the evidence. What does the Justice Department have here, so they can start picking apart this case? And this is going to take a while, and there's going to be, there's classified information here, so that generally takes much longer. There's a whole set of procedures and rules around that. So we're going to be covering this thing for a long time.
Okay, we'll look forward to having you on then a lot. Ken Delaney, as well as Fallon Gallagher, Sarah Matthews, Lisa Rubin, Catherine Christian. Thank you all so much. Let's go. We have more breaking news to share. Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn is leading a group of senators in demanding former special counsel Jack Smith be investigated by the DOJ for misconduct as well as potential disbarment. MSNBC's Michael Schnell is following this for us from Capitol Hill. Michael, welcome. What more do we know about this?
Yeah, look, Alex, this is in response to that news that we recently learned that during the Jack Smith investigation, the phone records of 9 Republican members of Congress, 8 senators, and 1 House member were obtained by the FBI as part of that Jack Smith investigation that was, of course, into the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Now, we had heard from members of Congress, those Republicans that were, they say, spied on, outraged, right? They were up in arms over this development that had been learned after an FBI document was obtained by Senator Chuck Grassley. He's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So now, in response to this outrage, we are seeing some of these members of Congress take action. So that letter today, led by Marsha Blackburn, one of the 9 whose phone records were obtained, along with 4 others, Lindsey Graham, Tommy Tuberville, Dan Sullivan, and Mike Kelly. They wrote a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, slamming the action, saying that the effort of obtaining their phone records, there were constitutional concerns, prosecutorial misconduct, and they're also saying there was no predicate for the action of obtaining their files. I want to read part of this for you. Quote, "It is clear to us that this invasion of our privacy was nothing more than a fishing expedition geared towards targeting President Trump." Now, specifically here, Alex, the group is asking Pam Bondi to refer Jack Smith and any prosecutors who helped with the issuance of these subpoenas for phone records to the Justice Department's Office of Professional Responsibility. This is part of the DOJ that was established in 1975 after Watergate. It's essentially meant to make sure that the DOJ acts in a proper way, that its duties are properly carried out. These 5 lawmakers are saying that once that entity does its investigation, they believe that there will be credence for Jack Smith to be disbarred. I want to read to you again part of this letter. Quote, "We firmly believe that upon examination of OPR's findings, these state entities, the ones where Jack Smith has a license to practice law, should consider all options in holding Smith accountable for this misconduct, including disbarment." So again, Alex, we knew that there was this outrage among these 9 Republican members of Congress over this news of their phone records being obtained. They are turning that outrage into action right now. We will reach out to Jack Smith to see if he has any comment on this development, but absolutely will be a story we'll continue to follow.
Absolutely. And those states where he is licensed to practice law are both New York and Tennessee, so they're going after him in both. Thank you very much, Michael Schnell, for that. In 90 seconds, the intensifying White House pressure campaign to execute President Trump's vows of vengeance. The new MSNBC reporting right after this.
Why suffer through painful heartburn longer than necessary? For effective relief, nothing works faster than Alka-Seltzer. The effervescent formula begins neutralizing acid in seconds to effectively relieve heartburn fast. Try Alka-Seltzer.
You can get this fixed now and pay later. You can get this fixed now and pay later. And this. Get it fixed now and pay later in 4 interest-free payments at SafeLight.com.
Safe Light Repair, Safe Light Replace.
A mystery.
Jesse loves playing detective.
But the real mystery was your irritated skin. So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. It cleans better and doesn't leave behind irritating residues.
And it's gentle on her skin.
Tide Free and Gentle Liquid is EPA Safer Choice certified.
It's got to be Tide.
For a limited time, save up to 50% on select styles of beautiful new carpet, hardwood, vinyl, and laminate flooring from Empire today. Plus, we'll beat any competitor's offer, guaranteed. And our price includes everything, installed flooring and even furniture moving. Get Empire's Home Floor Advantage and save up to 50% off. Visit EmpireToday.com or give us a call to schedule your free estimate. You know the number.
800-588-2300 Empire.
For plant-based, healthy blood pressure support, there's one brand at Walmart that stands above the rest. It's Super Beets by Human. Discover why Super Beets is the #1 cardiologist-recommended beet brand for heart health support at your nearest Walmart today.
The John Bolton indictment comes as we're learning more about the political pressure DOJ staffers are facing from the White House. Multiple sources familiar with the internal dynamics described to MSNBC, quote, public scoldings and tense discussions playing out in U.S. attorneys' offices in Washington, D.C. and Virginia, with prosecutors pursuing probes that political appointees pushed them to launch and finding little evidence of crimes. Let's bring in one of the authors of that new piece, MSNBC's Vaughn Hilliard. Also with me is Brendan Ballou, a former federal prosecutor who resigned in the wake of the January 6th pardons. Welcome to you both. Vaughn, you first here. Give us a sense of just how widespread this pressure campaign has been.
Right. Along with Carol, Ken, and Lisa, our colleagues, were reporting that in at least 6 U.S. attorneys' offices, there have been these tense conflicts between U.S. attorneys and the career prosecutors who are being asked to act upon effectively these high-priority cases that the administration has put to the top of their piles on their desks. Now, some of these cases have been open, not just here under the Trump administration, but previously. And what they are being urged to do is essentially present cases that could be brought to a grand jury to ultimately seek prosecution against these targeted individuals.
Okay, so Brendan, Vaughn and his colleagues also report that in some cases, career prosecutors have methodically walked through the steps of grand jury investigations they've been ordered to launch, but they've often delayed reporting back their conclusions. What does that tell you when you hear career prosecutors are slow-walking their cases? Is there a level of fear of bringing back information that they don't think that their boss wants to hear?
Absolutely. Based on Vaughn and his colleagues' really excellent reporting here, it seems like there's a complete breakdown in the relationship between the political leadership within DOJ and the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office and line-level prosecutors and other U.S. Attorney's offices, too. One of the things that's most extraordinary about this reporting is it suggests that line-level attorneys are actually talking to the press, which is almost unheard of. DOJ lawyers were really taught, to steer clear of any sort of public statements. We let the court documents do the talking. The fact that there seems to be real public outcry on the part of line-level attorneys suggests that they really don't have any faith in DOJ leadership not to pursue political investigations.
Yeah, just to let you know what we are seeing here. We were not able to see John Bolton. They have been very careful making him under the cover of cars and the like, coming through his garage door at his home, affording him a bit of privacy as he's gone in and out of his house today. But that's what you're looking at right there, John Bolton's home in Maryland. So, Vaughn, you also report that interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan is pushing to file charges against a mystery Democratic state lawmaker in Virginia. What can you tell us about that?
Right. This is one of those examples that we're talking about here in this piece. And MSNBC, we do not know the identity of this state Democratic lawmaker, but there is an active effort to seek information as part of an investigation to potentially bring to a grand jury a case of evidence to indict this individual. This case actually opened before the Trump administration. It was opened during the Biden administration, but had effectively gone dark to our understanding. And Lindsay Halligan, though, over this last weekend, asked for a memo to be prepared for her by this last Wednesday by the career prosecutors in the office, effectively to present whatever evidence they had and making the recommendation on whether to bring charges or not. We do not know exactly where that stands, but we know that these career prosecutors were urged to bring that case file of this state lawmaker, notably ahead of the November elections in Virginia, to bring this case of this state Democratic lawmaker ultimately to her desk. So there's a lot of open-ended questions, but that is sort of that tension that we are seeing between U.S. attorneys who are coming in by this DOJ and essentially deciding which cases to prioritize, and career prosecutors who have not felt comfortable in the past with the evidence presented and available to them at that point in time to recommend charges.
So, Brendan, in fact, this report highlights some specific examples of prosecutors who are facing pressure to pursue these cases against the president's political enemies, even though they lack the factual basis to seek criminal charges. That includes a prosecutor in Maryland who's been asked to file charges against Senator Adam Schiff. And then in Virginia, prosecutors are fearful of telling their U.S. attorney that there is no evidence to charge any members of former FBI Director Chris Wray's leadership team. So what effect does this kind of pressure have on the morale inside the DOJ?
Absolutely disastrous. And let me make 2 points here. One is, these sorts of pressure campaigns have a personal risk for all the attorneys involved. So, the bar rules prohibit invidious prosecutions. The DOJ Justice Manual prohibits discrimination based on a person's animosity towards a defendant. So depending on how both political and career attorneys act here, they're opening themselves up to bar investigations and DOJ investigations in the future. But the second point is, these sorts of pressure campaigns run contrary to the entire purpose of the Department of Justice. There's this expression that you have to bring the right case for the right reason. And so even if you have facts that suggest a criminal violation has occurred, if you are bringing that case because of personal or political animus against the defendant, that doesn't just run contrary to your professional obligations and to DOJ rules. It runs contrary to what the Department of Justice is entirely about.
Okay. Vaughn Hilliard, Brendan Malloub, thank you guys both so much. We're following some breaking news, some striking images of arrests coming out of a protest at an ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois. It's been happening just this last hour. Let's bring in MSNBC's Rosa Flores. Rosa, welcome. What has happened here? Tell us about it.
Alex, what we're seeing are clashes between protesters and police outside the ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois. We have some video that you can take a look at, some of this taken earlier today, showing at times police officers in a line formation moving forward towards protesters and then protesters on the ground, getting zip-tied, getting carried away. According to the Cook County Sheriff's Office, as of 10 a.m. this morning, 9 arrests have been made, ages between 25 and 44. The charges unclear. We were told that those charges are pending. I was in Chicago last week and earlier this week, and I can tell you from talking to some of the protesters out there, some of them had been out there for about a month, protesting against the Trump administration's ICE tactics, the enhanced enforcement in their communities. reality, the targeting of Chicago, the targeting of immigrant families in those communities. I also spent time in Little Village, Chicago. This is the heart and soul of the Mexican American community. And I can tell you, we just can't forget about the human impact of what is happening in Chicago and across the country. There are so many people who are afraid to go out of their homes. They're afraid to go to school. They're afraid to go to the grocery store. That's why we're seeing some of these protesters going out to that Broadview facility and protesting on behalf of those people who are too afraid. I spoke to some of the vendors in Little Village, again, the heart and soul of the Mexican-American community there in Chicago. And normally on 26th Street, on both sides of that street, there's usually lots of vendors. There's very few of them now. I talked to one business owner who said that her revenues are down to COVID levels because there's so few people who are actually going out to this area in Chicago. And Alex, I can tell you from talking to this woman, she came to tears talking about the fear in the immigrant community there. And that is why we're seeing more and more people out on the streets speaking out for those who are too fearful to speak for themselves.
And we just saw evidence of why they are feeling that way. Rosa Flores, thank you so much. And soon, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to arrive at the White House just one day after President Trump's phone call with Vladimir Putin. How we expect today's meeting to go, we've got a live report from Washington after this.
Doug.
Imagine if we could tell everyone here that Liberty Mutual customizes car insurance to save people hundreds. Leave! It's a mascot!
Oh, what's this? A fan has run out onto the field and he's not wearing pants.
Do birds need pants?
And the control room censored it.
Oh. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Here's some information about replacing windows and doors that just may surprise you. I'm Brian Gary. I'm here with Brian Price from Renewal by Anderson.
Hey Brian, homeowners always ask, my windows aren't even 10 years old. Why do I have to replace them? But if they aren't quality windows, they may not last.
Some builders put money into kitchens and bathrooms and cheap out on the windows. I see it all the time. But your reputation for quality is unheard of in this industry.
Well, thanks, Brian. We've been the full-service replacement window division of Anderson for 30 years. So when people don't want to mess around and they want quality, they call us.
What can you say about your certified master installers?
Well, a new window or door is only going
friend, Bolsonaro for attempting to overturn an election, they get 50% tariffs.
Yeah. And at the heart of all this, not only is Marjorie Taylor Greene upset, soybean farmers in the U.S. are so furious about 100%. The Argentina bailout because the soybean market has been closed because of the Trump trade war with China. So it sounds sort of complicated, but very much woven together. So there's discontent in Trump country about the soybean trade war and that bailout. Yep.
I love
She's onto something.
I love having our Nebraska farm boy here with us these times. All right. Coming up, free buses, rent freezes, and the mob in the back of a yellow cab. We'll take you to New York City, where the candidates for mayor are not pulling any punches.
You don't have an experience, I make up for an integrity. And what you don't have an integrity, you could never make up for an experience.
Yes.
You make me feel so miserable.
Flonase relieves your worst allergy symptoms so you can start feeling better the same day and save your relationship with nature. Flonase.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
I need help with their snoring.
Sleep Number does that.
Thank you.
And now, max out your savings. The more you buy, the more you save on beds, bases, and more. Check it out at a Sleep Number store near you.
great pair of lungs. Shame about your swollen gums. You need Parodontax, clinically proven to help reverse 4 signs of early gum disease. The gum experts.
You can get this fixed now and pay later. You can get this fixed now and pay later. And this. Get it fixed now and pay later in 4 interest-free payments at SafeLight.com.
SafeLight Repair, SafeLight Replace. Empower.
I got her a little something. A little something, Dad?
Hold up. Walt rolled his 401k account into an Empower IRA and planned for times like this. I'm for Team Splurge.
Thanks, Grandpa.
Get good at money so you can be a little bad. Empower.
Over the years, you've talked to him about curveballs. You've talked to him about strategy. You've talked winning seasons, losing seasons, and the off-season. Now it's time to talk about how you want to live your next season. For over 30 years, Right at Home has been providing seniors the tools they need to plan the next chapter of their lives and the care they need to stay where they want to be. Right at Home. Call or visit our website and let's start talking about living.
And sold to Carvana. Ugh, that was too convenient.
It's a great offer. What's wrong, John?
I set aside a week to sell my car, Clarence. I haven't had free time since 2006.
Isn't free time a good thing?
They pick it up tomorrow and they pay me on the spot. What am I supposed to do with all this time?
You could visit a museum.
All week?
You could learn Italian.
Ho venduto la mia macchina a Carvana.
I just sold my car to Carvana, too. What are we going to do?
He gets it. What are we going to do with all this time? Sell your car to Carvana today. Asking the right question can greatly impact your future.
Are you really a licensed electrician?
Trust, especially when it comes to your finances.
Are you a certified financial planner?
I'm a CFP professional.
CFP professionals are committed to acting in your best interest. That's why it's gotta be a CFP.
In a healthy gut garden, balance is key. Benefiber's plant-based prebiotic fiber gently nourishes the gut, working with your body to help you flourish. Grow it feels good with Benefiber. And for 6 grams of fiber with triple energy support, try new Benefiber Super Greens.
Alka-Seltzer Plus Cold or Flu Fizzy Chews. Chew, fizz. Feel better fast. No water needed. Alka-Seltzer Plus Fizzy Chews.
Living with chronic migraine? 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more. Botox prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine, and treatment is 4 times a year. So why wait? Talk to your doctor.
Botox effects may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as trouble swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Those with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions like rash, breathing problems, dizziness, neck and injection site pain, and headache. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions like ALS, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medicines like botulinum toxins, which may increase the risk of serious side effects.
In a survey, 91% of patients wish they'd started Botox sooner. Ask your doctor today. If eligible, you may pay $0.
Closed captioning brought to you by Gilt. Visit Gilt.com today for up to 70% off designer brands.
Gilt has the designers that get your heart racing. At insider prices, new every day. Hurry, they'll be gone in a flash. Designer sales at up to 70% off. Shop Gilt.com today.
Gloves off in Gotham. With less than 3 weeks until Election Day, the New York City mayoral debate got feisty and personal.
He literally has never had a job. On his resume, it says he interned for his mother. This is not a job for a first-timer. Any day, you could have a hurricane, you have, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing, people could die.
Mr.
Mamdani, you want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience.
A panel is back, including Isaac Dovere, New Yorker, as you were saying in the break.
True.
New Yorker, not soybean farmer, which we like everybody here. So, Mr. City Slicker, What do you think of the debate? What's the big takeaway from the sources you're talking
I think the big takeaway is that Cuomo could not answer for a lot of parts of his record and what he has done, and Mamdani really couldn't answer for a lot of what he's proposing to do and how he would do it. And that is the choice now that goes in front of New Yorkers, but of course it's not just a binary choice as much as Andrew Cuomo would like that to be the case. Curtis Sliwa was there constantly injecting himself into the conversation, saying after the debate he thinks Andrew Cuomo should be the one to drop out, not him. It makes it really hard to see whether that there's a path for Cuomo to get ahead unless he gets a lot of the Sliwa votes, but it also makes it hard for Mamdani to see a path to getting a real majority of the vote. He could win with a plurality. It's not ranked choice voting like it was in the primary there, but there's a lot riding on that for Mamdani, who most insiders think is in good position to win. He has a big agenda. He's going to need a lot of support. And if he doesn't clear 50%, which might be what we're headed for, that is an issue for him after the election.
So that agenda is what helped catapult him to where he is right now, given his age and his level of experience, Nia, in addition to the fact that he does very well on social media. But what Isaac was talking about with regard to a lot of the free stuff he is promising, that was also a big topic last night.
Look, I've said very clearly, making buses fast and free costs about $700 million a year. Making universal child care a reality costs about $5 or $6 billion a year. If you raise the state's top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey, you'd be raising $5 billion in and of itself.
The Assemblyman's whole plan is based on a myth. He's going to raise taxes. Albany's going to raise taxes statewide on corporations, but the money's only going to go to New York City. That could never happen. It's not just that the governor wouldn't support it. It's impossible. He said he's going to raise the taxes the same as New Jersey, corporate tax. No, it would be double the tax. You would see New Yorkers on 995 fleeing to Florida.
Yeah.
Listen, I think voters at this point are signaling that they want something new. They want some bold vision, even if that vision could be hard to implement. And, you know, you heard Governor Cuomo or former Governor Cuomo saying, you know, it's a myth. You know, this is sort of the stuff that campaigns are often made of, right? You know, hopes and wishes and people's notion that maybe something different can happen going forward. You know, I mean, the contrast here between Governor Cuomo, who is a household name in national politics, certainly in New York politics. His father was governor. He was governor. It's, you know, but there he is, just sounding, you know, like he's somebody from the past and kind of looking stiff and wooden. And I'm sure he can't believe he's in this place, right? Yeah. That he is being beaten, at least in the polls so far, by a 33-year-old assemblyman.
And that's the argument he's making. I do have experience, and it's a huge city, and this guy doesn't.
It is the argument, and it's falling flat so far. We see sort of broad signs of this elsewhere. It's a generational argument, there's no doubt about it, even though Cuomo is not certainly the age of the president or the former president. But it's a generational argument. But it's also, this race is going to define, in some respects, the direction of the Democratic Party. It will be overstated, there's no doubt about it. This is Manhattan, this is New York City, and the other boroughs as well. But this is something that is just the call for change is one of the strongest calls you can have in an election. And that's the case he's making. So why not try it? Because other things haven't worked. The affordability crisis is really the anthem of this campaign.
Yeah. The city of New York has the biggest Jewish population outside of the state of Israel, and Mamdani's position on a lot of different things and some statements that he has made, including globalize the Intifada, or at least not separating himself from that, have been a big part of the campaign. And that came up last night. Let me just play some sound and then we talk about it.
I, like many New Yorkers, am hopeful that this ceasefire will hold. I'm hopeful that it is durable. I'm hopeful that it is just. And for it to be just, we also have to ensure that it addresses the conditions that preceded this. Conditions like occupation, like the siege, and apartheid.
The Assemblyman just said in his response, well, it depends on occupation. That is code, meaning that Israel does not have a right to exist as a Jewish state, which he has never acknowledged. That is from the river to the sea. That's why he won't denounce globalize the Intifada, which means kill all Jews.
I want to be very clear. The occupation is a reference to international law and the violation of it.
Now, he did, and you can speak to this, try to sort of clean up the globalized, the Intifada thing last night. But also on this program yesterday, we had a prominent Palestinian saying that he was upset that Mamdani went on Fox this week and didn't denounce Hamas and say that Hamas should lay down their weapons. Last night, tried to clean that up, too, saying, of course, I believe they should lay down their arms.
Yeah, like, this has been a really difficult thing for Mamdani to handle. It is pretty clear where his own beliefs have been on this issue overall, but he spent some time distancing, saying that he was going to maybe distance himself from the phrase globalized intifada. Then he has. He was on Fox on Wednesday and was asked about whether Hamas should lay down its weapons, and he avoided answering the question and saying he doesn't have opinions on that. And then last night on the debate stage, he did have an opinion on it, which was, yes, they should lay down their weapons. It's, of course, because of the size of the Jewish population and because of how much this has been an issue in the race, that this was part of the debate at all. And I think, importantly, somewhat to my surprise, it was about a 15-minute segment of the debate. In the first hour, they didn't get to questions about affordability and housing and education until the second hour. Well, just because those are major issues in governing a city. But this has been a really big, this has been a big issue in the race the whole time. And I think, look, when I was covering the primary, Mamdani used to complain that the only reason Israel was an issue is because Andrew Cuomo was making it an issue, and that it had nothing to do with what he was talking about as mayor. Since the primary, the politics of this has shifted in a lot of ways. Mamdani obviously won the primary, and now he's been leaning into it in more of a way.
Before we go to break, you mentioned Curtis Lewa.
Yes.
Let's just play one moment from Curtis Lewa last night.
When you need to get somewhere fast and you can't take the train, do you hail a taxi? Do you use rideshare? Mr. Sliwa, what do you do?
I try to avoid yellow cabs. As you know, I was shot in the back of a yellow cab in 1992 by the Gottis and Gambinos. But I'd find my way around. If I have to, I Uber if I can't get there by mass transit.
Fact check true.
It is true. It's not been fully proven that it was the Gottis, but he was definitely shot. And he said to me a couple weeks ago, I was talking to him, and he said about dropping out of the race. He said, "Look, I've been shot before. The only thing that would get me out of the race is a bullet to the back of the head."
Oh,
now.
God forbid. Oh, my God. God
that was his. That's
God
his
forbid.
phrasing.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, crickets from the ceasefire crowd in Tinseltown. We have new reporting on Hollywood celebrities who spent 2 years condemning Israel for civilian deaths in Gaza, but are now accused of being silent about Hamas carrying out public executions against the Palestinian people. Stay with us.
Tony Shalhoub, Breaking Bread, Sunday at 9 on CNN.
Never thought this would happen.
We got you.
When disaster threatens to put production weeks behind, call the team prepared to be there in minutes. Serve Pro like it never even happened.
See, I made this one crooked. This moment, story time for Sarah. It means everything to them and to all of us. At Evernorth, we make complex care journeys simpler with comprehensive coordinated care for better patient outcomes. Now, Sarah's grandma doesn't spend all day at the infusion center. She gets her treatment at home with Evernorth's specialty pharmacy, Accredo, so Sarah never misses story time. Evernorth Specialty Services, because every moment counts.
What causes a curve down there? Is it Peyronie's disease? Is there somebody I can talk to or help?
I got somebody for that.
I got somebody for that. I got somebody for that.
You guys got somebody for Peyronie's disease?
There's hope for the estimated 1 in 10 men who may have Peyronie's disease, or PD. A urology specialist who treats PD can help you create a plan, including non-surgical options. Find somebody today at GoGetSomebody.com.
Years of hard work. Decades of dedication. Committed to giving back. You've been there, done that, and you're still here for more. So now that you're 50 or older and at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia and IPD, be proactive with Capvaxive. a vaccine specifically designed for adults to help protect against pneumonia, an invasive disease caused by certain types of pneumococcal bacteria. Capvaxive is the only vaccine that helps protect against the strains that cause 84% of IPD in adults 50 or older, compared with up to 52% by other pneumococcal conjugate vaccines. Don't get Capvaxive if you're allergic to the vaccine or its ingredients. Tell your doctor if you have a weakened immune system. Common side effects include injection site reactions, feeling tired, headache, muscle aches, and fever. Whether you've had another pneumococcal vaccine or not, ask your doctor or pharmacist about Capvaxive.
Over the years, you've talked to her about boys. You've talked to her till you were blue in the face. You've talked about parenting tips, college prep, and who's in the family photos. Now it's time to talk about what living looks like for you. For over 30 years, Right at Home has been providing seniors the tools they need to plan the next chapter of their lives and the care they need to stay where they want to be. Right at Home. Call or visit our website and let's start talking about living.
Empower. So handsome.
I can't buy this.
Whoa, whoa. Your Empower investment accounts are designed for the long haul. So, get good at money so you can be a little bad. Empower.
You DTF?
Yeah.
Same.
Oh, my shirt.
You too can DTF yourself with direct-to-film transfers from Ninja Transfers.
Please press deal. That's the deal. Ninja Transfers got the feel.
How does the world's most trusted dog expert keep his own dog so healthy?
Hi, I am Cesar Milan. In my 20 years rehabilitating dogs, I've seen too many struggle with health problems that no amount of training could fix. Then I discovered it wasn't the dog, it was their food. Fortunately, I found veterinarian Dr. Marty's Anti-Kibble Breakthrough.
Nature's Blend is packed with whole foods that are freeze-dried, locking in nutrients.
I saw remarkable improvements in my dogs within weeks.
Try Dr. Marty risk-free for 90 days. Plus, get a free gift when you call or visit drmartypets.com/Caesar.
If history has taught us anything, it's not to root against the underdog, against impossible odds. You don't stand down. You swing first. Kalshi. Trade on anything.
Wednesday night on TNT. Here we go.
Buffalo, they got a lot of skill on that team that can put in the net. Playing Detroit, can't be turning pucks over, so make you pay.
Kane with a shot. Score! Should be a good matchup.
Red Wings Sabres, Wednesday at 7 on TNT.
The war in Gaza divided Americans. That's especially on display in Hollywood, where some celebrities have used their voices not just to call for a ceasefire, but a boycott of Israeli films. Now, Warner Brothers Discovery, CNN's parent company, is now the second major studio to openly reject that because it violates anti-discrimination policies. And as CNN's Elizabeth Wagmeister reports, many prominent celebrities who were vocal about a ceasefire are accused of being silent now that there is actually a ceasefire with Israel since Hamas released Israeli hostages.
And free Palestine. From Hack star Hannah Einbinder on the Emmy stage.
What we are witnessing is a genocide.
To Javier Bardem on the red carpet. Many celebrities have used their platforms to oppose the war in Gaza.
You can be pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel at the same time.
Deborah Messing is among those in Hollywood who've been vocal in support of Israel and is now calling out other celebrities in the wake of the ceasefire deal. After 2 years of screaming, "Ceasefire now," she wrote on Instagram, it is clear that was never the issue. Messing reposted a statement calling it, quote, obvious that it's only about terrorizing Jews. On the day of the ceasefire agreement, Erin Foster, creator of Netflix's Nobody Wants This, called out what she perceived as Hollywood silence, reposting, quote, I'm not sure why everyone is being so utterly quiet today, but there's a deal in place that will finally bring peace to Palestinians. Roughly 500 artists, including Mark Ruffalo and Cynthia Nixon, signed the Artists for Ceasefire petition, which called for an end to Israel's war in Gaza, which was launched after the October 7th massacre by Hamas.
Celebrities shouldn't turn real wars into branding exercises.
Hen Mazig of the Tel Aviv Institute has counseled pro-Israel celebrities. He says they feel the ceasefire has only deepened the Hollywood divide.
Now when the war is ending, they're looking for their friends, they're looking left and right, and no one is there with them. No one is willing to say this very basic, we're not looking for anyone to go down with an Israeli flag. They just want solidarity.
Artists for Ceasefire released this statement after the ceasefire deal, calling it a heartening moment of relief, while calling out Israel's bombing and intentional starvation of Palestinian civilians and demanding the enforcement of international law against all responsible parties. It did acknowledge the loss of Israeli life on October 7th and concluded with a call for lasting peace for Palestinians and Israelis. For his part, Ruffalo has focused on Palestinians since the ceasefire, reposting here a call for new homes and clean water, while continuing to criticize Israel. He has not acknowledged the release of the Israeli hostages this week on social media.
If those celebrities gave even 1% of their activism to calling out Hamas, as they do call out Israel on a daily basis, I believe that the ceasefire would have happened much earlier on.
Before the ceasefire, nearly 4,000 Hollywood artists signed a pledge to boycott any Israeli film institution that is implicated in genocide of the Palestinian people.
I cannot work with somebody that's justify or support the genocide. I can't.
Paramount rejected the boycott, saying silencing individual creative artists based on their nationality does not advance the cause of peace. Warner Brothers, which shares a parent company with CNN, called the boycott a violation of its policy. While we respect the rights of individuals and groups to express their views, we will continue to align our business practices with our policies and the law.
I think that everyone is looking at the film festivals moving forward. Are they going to continue with this soft cancellation of Israeli filmmakers, which has been going on for 2 years?
And Elizabeth joins us now. Elizabeth, have any celebrities who were calling for peace in Gaza commented yet on the horrific video of Hamas executing Palestinians in Gaza?
You know, Dana, I have reached out to a variety of the most vocal celebrities on this issue. Most did not get back to me. Now, Mark Ruffalo's representative said he was unable to participate in this piece because he's overseas in production. But Javier Bardem, he did get back to me, and it was very important to him to give us this statement, Dana. He said, telling CNN that he is completely against the execution of anyone, including Palestinians, by Hamas, calling the executions, quote, an atrocious act of violence. He says, quote, everyone deserves a fair trial where the accusations are shown and proven, and only then be rightfully accountable by a fair law that obviously does not include execution. Now, Dana, he also addressed that Israeli film boycott, that pledge that he signed along with nearly 4,000 other artists in Hollywood. Here's what he had to say, quote, I want this to be very clear. We do not discriminate against any person based on their nationality, race, religion, or gender. We, of course, believe discrimination of any kind is wrong. We support holding companies and institutions all over the world accountable, not individuals, for their complicity in the genocide of the Palestinian people. Now, as for Artists for Ceasefire, that organization, I reached out. They did not respond directly to my question about whether they would be addressing the Hamas executions. They also declined an interview to speak about the group's next steps now that there is a ceasefire in place, instead referring us to their post on social media.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for that report. And up next, a brand new video from Senate Republicans uses artificial intelligence as a political weapon. You're going to see for yourself after a quick break.
This fall, the rich story of New Orleans continues. Uncover what drives the music, the food, and the traditions of a city shaped by the past and living for the moment. The CNN original series, New Orleans, Soul of the City, Sunday at 10 on CNN.
Over the years, you've talked about everything from boys to parenting tips. Now it's time to talk about what living looks like for you. For more than 30 years, Right at Home has provided seniors the care they need to stay at home. Call Right at Home today.
What a hotel. Right? And only $250 a night for my favorite site. What?
You didn't check Trivago.
I got mine for $155. You have to check Trivago. Oh, yeah? Prove it.
On Trivago, you can compare hotel prices from multiple different sites, even your favorite one.
Look, same hotel, $100 less.
You didn't check Trivago?
I didn't check Trivago.
Check Trivago to compare prices and save up to 40%. Hotel? Trivago.
It's that time of year when people are making decisions about Medicare plans. Maybe you are too.
Honestly, I don't want to have to look for a Medicare plan by myself, but I don't know who to turn to or who I can trust.
And that's why Aetna licensed agents are standing by, ready to answer your questions and help make the process of choosing a Medicare plan easier.
When you call and talk to me about finding a Medicare plan, I'm going to give you my name and my personal toll-free number so that if you have more questions or need help, you can reach back out to me.
Get Medicare coverage that's right for you and fits your budget. Aetna has Medicare Advantage plans with monthly plan premiums starting at $0. Plans also include dental, vision, and hearing coverage. Annual enrollment for Medicare ends December 7th, so call for your free Medicare coverage assessment today. Call 1-844-514-9789.
Like a relentless weed, moderate to severe ulcerative colitis symptoms can keep coming back. Break away to what's possible with Tremfya, with rapid relief at 4 weeks. Many people experienced remission at 1 and even 2 years. Some saw 100% visible healing of their intestinal lining. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Healing is possible with Tremfya. Tremfya now offers self-administration from the start. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today.
SoFi is helping me get my money right to achieve my ambitions.
Like earning more money on my money as a head chef. Ready for service?
Bank with SoFi to earn a higher APY and an epic welcome bonus.
Doctors recommend Colay stool softener for gentle, dependable relief from constipation. It's so gentle, doctors even recommend it during pregnancy and after surgery. Colace increases water in the stool, making it softer so it's easier to go. No harsh laxatives, cramping, or straining. Colace.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rose Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Sildenafil starts things off strong, and Tadalafil stays in your system for longer. More confidence, more control. Rose Sparks. Connect with a provider at ro.co/sparks.
There's an easier way to pay for the everyday and unexpected. Up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. Download Dave today.
Have I Got News for You, Saturday at 9 on CNN.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Bookalimo.com. Reserve your ride today.
I use Book a Limo on all my trips. They have drivers everywhere.
I always feel safe when I travel with their chauffeurs, from hello to goodbye.
Book a limo. Any car, anywhere.
Artificial intelligence crashing into politics. Today, the National Republican Senatorial Committee posted a video on social media that takes an off-camera quote from Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and turns it into this AI-generated fake soundbite about the shutdown.
Every day gets better for us.
Chuck Schumer thinks playing with Americans' livelihoods is just a game. When asked about the government shutdown, Schumer said,
Every day gets better for us.
Really, Chuck? How's that?
Now, just to reiterate, Senator Schumer did say the words in an off-camera interview with Punchbowl News. The Senate GOP campaign committee used AI to turn those words into video and make it look nefarious, as you just saw. It does say in small letters in the bottom right of the screen that it is AI generated. My panel is back now. Jeff?
It's a new frontier. I mean, the unusual part about this, they actually are his words. I mean, we're going to see this probably used in a way where they're actually not his words, but it's certainly no context exists with AI.
Yeah, and it looks quite creepy, and it makes him look malevolent and sneering, and yeah, it's disturbing. And you know, here we are talking about it, and we can say it's AI, but you disseminate that on the interwebs, and not everybody is going to know that it's actually, you know, an AI-generated clip.
Yeah, it's like frontiers of dishonesty also, because it is his words, but he didn't say it, but so it's defensible, but it's not defensible. I mean, what's the difference between this and having a voice actor do a Chuck Schumer impression? Maybe not much, except that that video is fake. The video is fake, and that has been pushed forward by the Senate Republican Committee now.
Yeah, like you said, this is not the first time we're going to see that. But it is would you say, a new frontier?
It's a whole new world.
It's a whole new world, new frontier. All of it is true. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining Inside Politics today. Please join me on State of the Union this Sunday. Republican Senator Katie Britt is among my guests. I hope to see you. It's Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern, right here on CNN. CNN News Central starts right now.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Boris Sanchez alongside Brianna Keilar in the nation's capital, and we are standing by. At any moment, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to arrive at the White House, and President Donald Trump is expected to greet him for what will soon be their fourth face-to-face meeting this year. Several meetings have ranged from cordial and even fun, some would say, with smiles and laughs, to fiery and dramatic.
And being excused unceremoniously from the White House. So we are watching this very carefully. And it comes after a busy week that began with President Trump signing a ceasefire deal for Gaza. He's now hoping to broker another peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. But Zelensky also has weapons on his mind, specifically long-range Tomahawk missiles that the White House has suggested could be on the table. Trump has signaled he's open to allowing Ukraine to have these weapons. And a second summit between Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin is also being planned in Hungary right now. President Trump saying that meeting will happen within 2 weeks or so. Let's go to CNN anchor and chief White House correspondent Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, a big moment today, another one. What can we expect?
Yeah, and obviously this comes off the heels of the president's trip to the Middle East. He believes that he ended that war there. He stated definitively that he believes it's over. And now he's turning his eyes, Brianna and Boris, to the next one that he is hoping to end, which is Russia's war in Ukraine. And so we're going to be watching this meeting very closely on that key issue that you just mentioned there. These Tomahawk missiles that Zelensky has been seeking, they're capable of striking deep inside Russia, which is why the Ukrainians are interested in them. They want to be able to have that option at their hands as this war has continued to go on, and as Putin has continued to strike Ukraine, despite many phone calls with the president, despite his orders for him to stop. We have seen that continue to go on, at times frustrating the president, but then at other times, after they have phone calls, sometimes the president pulls back on his criticism of the Russian leader. And so we're waiting to see how he handles that in front of Zelensky today. But there's a few key differences already so far in this visit compared to the last two times we saw President Zelensky here at the White House. And the first, Boris and Brianna, is where Zelensky stayed last night. He was at the Blair House, which is the presidential guest house that is just across the street from the White House. It's typically where world leaders stay when they're coming and visiting with the U.S. president.